All right, seed number 10 versus seed number 15 here. We're going to open this on a cliffside. Boy, I do see an Archipelago. Pigeons Valley? Oh boy. I don't think I've actually seen a Pigeons Valley game in this tournament before. I might have missed some, but I definitely didn't cost any of them. It's one of the new maps coming up as well. And I'm in general curious about Archipelago as well, because I do believe we had a couple of change-ups as well to make it a little bit more balanced. As you can just see on that little mini icon, it definitely feels a lot less random than what it used to be in the original map scripts.
Yeah, it's a lot more. I will say a lot of the water maps are pretty fun to watch, pretty fun to cast. And beforehand, when you're playing a water map, it might not feel the greatest. Cast on a water map, watch on a water map, it definitely has felt a little bit better. And some of them have surprised me now that they're starting to, become in favor for some people. I won't say myself yet has leaned into there yet.
Well, indeed, water. That could be a big question mark. We have two maps featuring water, then, of course, Coastal Cliffs. You cannot access that patch of water, so it doesn't really matter. It's just like a mini Arabia. But first, we gotta settle Cliffside here. Game number 1 between Volda Esport and E-Gear. We're heading into game number 1 on Cliffside.
Yeah. And let's jump on into the second series of the day. Looks like Dragavan decided to change up his build, was going to go for some quick farms on the English and the red here. Decided to just go on the sheep. His teammate Mahodo playing the Delhi, and he is in the color orange. And on their opposing side, on the team of E-Gear, we got the blue combinations, teal and blue. We got team name though, or player name Yellow, playing as the color teal in French, and Deniskia playing as the Ubids in the color blue.
I already see the YouTube comments just freaking out about us calling someone yellow who's playing teal. That's probably the... Oh boy, that's gonna be confusing. Anyway, it could get a lot worse if Dragavan or Muhodo start taking yellow as their color.
Oh gosh, it's just we're gonna have a set this series already. It's gonna cause some confusion. We're gonna accidentally call out some wrong names, but who knows here? One thing I will say is Dragavan and Mahodo are kind of primed with a nice all-in combo civilization. Although Delhi takes a little bit of time to get up and going, they love playing their feudal age extended and then all of a sudden have 5-10 scholars behind it, going castle, and then getting thousands of techs for free that take the same timing.
Yeah, looking at Dragavan and Muhodo, they had a very tough opening round here. They got 3-0'd by Wham and Puppy Paw, but there's probably not that much of a surprise out there. At the end of the day, Wham and Puppy Paw are one of the favorites to potentially win the whole thing. And on the other side, E-Gear, they played a 3-1 against BLB, Goatkovsky, and Jigglypuff, one of the teams that actually does rotate all 3 players. We do have 3 players for both of these teams, in fact, but we haven't seen the actual substitute step in any of these games, so it really feels like a 2-man show with an actual backup instead of 3, equally distributed players.
Yeah, I want to say VS might have used Ramen in a series or 2. I'm not for sure about that, though. I will say that they do have some fun strategies that they will usually pull out. We saw a proxy base go down in the last series. I would not be too surprised to see some proxy bases go down on that Pigeon Valley game. I want to say I saw VES try to do that beforehand, but that is not for this game here. We still have Cliffside. Feudal ages are starting to come to conclusion here in the next minute or so. It's Dome of the Faith, it's Abbey, it's School of Cav, and then Deniskia is aging up with... It's a good question. Just growth.
Yeah, it's...
And growth is one that I like. I like seeing this. It usually means they're going to play a little bit more of an extended feudal age, or they have to respect the opponent's feudal age a little more.
Oh, and I absolutely love this here. Deniskia just dropping off some of the sheep that he collected to the teammate. He's playing Iobits. He doesn't need an awful lot of sheep to work with. In fact, he's got none under the town center. But the teammate is playing French. The French player is going to be very, very happy when you have all that backup food under the town center. Delays the time that they need to go out to take the hunt. And in general, just make sure that night production is very sustainable. Nice little touch there by Team E-Gear, making sure that the French player does have a sufficient supply of sheep.
Yeah, and this is something you'll see out of a lot of the high elo teams, whether it's Sheep given over to Fringe or whether it's a player like or a civ like Mongols dropping a pasture in your teammate's base. You always want to be supporting your teammates somehow. Speaking of starting to support your teammates, we're going to see some Desert Raiders probably start coming out to pair together with those French Royal Knights.
So, quite a lot of potential aggression here. And I wonder how Muhodo and Dragavan will deal with this. They do have Delhi on their side, so if you don't contest them, I could easily envision the Delhi player just warding some of those choke points and going for all 3 sacred sites. That would be reasonably easy to hold, especially because you're looking at a 2-man show now. In a 1v1 game, it's difficult for the Delhi player to hold all 3 sacred sites at the same time, simply because they usually don't have that army to make sure that all 3 sacred sites are well protected. But when you have 2 players on the same team, it actually becomes a lot more realistic to hold all 3 of them starting the middle of feudal age, essentially.
Yeah, and it looks like English going with the typical spear longbow play, as we saw barracks and a range get dropped. And I was incorrect about the Desert Raiders. It looks like Deniskia is just going to be playing archers and more archers, at least for the time being. Maybe we'll do like 1 or 2 Desert Raiders just to get the camel debuff for someone like the King or a unit like the Ghazi Raider. Archer able to tank up that Knight charge. Villagers don't take the damage. Knight trying to burn down this outpost, but I don't think he's going to be able to do enough over the course of time, as the archers are going to be slowly picking away at his health, and villagers can always just run out en masse and quick build that down if they want.
I think the value here in this King is the fact that you are now going to go back, heal up, and at the same time, you've contested at gold mine for quite some time. Depending on what Deniskia wanted to do, that could actually influence the timings quite a bit. Of these little walls over here, you're up against French. You want to make sure that those knights cannot just pop out of nowhere and hit you in the behind. So far, I feel like this aggression is working reasonably well with Volda Esport. They're harassing the Ayubit player. And most importantly, they have Ghazi Raiders as well, which will be reasonably effective against those knights as well.
Yeah, one of the things we haven't talked about in the previous series, because it didn't happen too much, and I think that was mainly because of the maps that we saw, was there wasn't a lot of like attacking in between the team's bases, which is one of the primary focus when it comes to 2v2s. You want to split up the 2v2s and make it, 2 different 2v1s essentially. Don't allow the military masses to group on together. Don't allow the unit compositions to conjoin, and that's exactly what Team VES is doing right now. They're in between the bases of blue and teal with their units. Knight circled around.
It's finding value. It's finding value hitting that gold mine. This King has been doing a lot just to idle out those villagers. Really, Dragavan has been doing such a good job with very few commitments to army.
We see the pro scouts play from yellow.
Ooh. Now that I love. I absolutely love this approach from pro scouts. If you think about it, if you can continuously bring in all those deer carcasses, remember you have 4 patches of deer here, so you have a lot more well-available deer to actually bring in compared to 1v1s. 4 patches of deer on your side only, and then you could potentially try yoinking some from the other side as well. Nevertheless, it means that your night production will be very sustainable for quite some time because you have all that excess food to work with.
Yeah, very, very safe food eco. Kind of makes the Ghazi Raider play not feel great, because then the only resource they can hit on the French is gold. And then, okay, now Yellow knows that. He can just focus on defending his gold. Meanwhile, Deniskia just gets to play that defensive game. He's still been on just archers. He's still very condensed in his eco and able to slowly build that number up. He's got 23 archers out onto the field. Meanwhile, Dragavan, he is forced to make spear and longbow, which is really going to kind of diminish that value in the ranged war.
Yeah, the Ghazi Raiders are starting to look scary though, because remember, Ghazi Raiders are reasonably good against archers, and they're also pretty good against the knights. So of course they're not as tanky to justify just going straight into the knight plus archer combo, but it's really a good unit that can respond to anything that Deniskia and Yellow have on the field right now, and this is exactly what I'm not even going to say anything about that. There was an opportunity for a great surround. At least one Knight falls, but this could have been so much better for Muhodo.
Yeah, I thought it was about to be exactly what you were talking about. It's actually a 1-for-1 overall. One Gazi falls, one Knight falls, still beneficial for Muhodo. But no sacred sites have been secured at this point in the game. We're at the 940 mark. It feels like VES has had the map control, had the opportunity to move forward if they wanted to. And just now, as I say that, Scholars starting to make the trek.
We have the ability to mass produce the Scholars over here. We're not looking at a Tower of Victory build from Muhodo, which means that he can actually afford to just run out and even sacrifice a couple of Scholars just to secure the sacred sites. But for that, they first have to fight this off. And this is not a good fight by any means for them. Not a single Knight killed. They lost like 5 Gazi Raiders.
Yeah, really good fight by Yellow there. Was actually paying attention, didn't have his units get surrounded, and had enough numbers there to take it very efficiently. And you're going to slowly see the drawback of English now. Cliffside, a great map for English, but in general, playing against, you know, quicker units, you get push-pulled. He wasn't a part of that fight. He's like, oh, I'm going to come help. And now he's so far away from his base and not conjoined together with the Gazi Raiders. He can so easily get surrounded when he's out of position here.
Yeah, he's coming through the Stealth Forest, though, and this might be a nasty surprise for Deniska and Yellow. Indeed, they have to think twice about that one. They do have 40 archers against just 18 longbows, so the numbers are definitely better in terms of archers for Deniska and Yellow. But at the same time, they're still facing a lot of Gazi Raiders out here. For now, they'll just be fine contesting that sacred site. Still, Dragavan and Muhodo should be able to secure the other, and they do snipe the scout here.
The scout's so important. You mentioned the stealth force just a second ago. You might not know exactly what you're facing. Longbow's able to snipe out a Knight during that fight. That's always the problem with longbows. You feel like you either have to take the engagement, or if not, you're slowly just getting trickled, you know, damage in. A volley here, a volley there, and then all of a sudden you lose a Knight and you haven't done any damage to the longbows.
In the meantime, the other 2 sacred sites are being secured. Deniska is now looking at Castle Age, however, and that could be a big factor here. He's by a mile going to be the fastest player to Castle. And it looks like now there's a pivot from E-Gear to the left side. They are doing a really good job contesting these sacred sites. Minute 12, and we don't have a secured sacred site just yet for Muhodo and Dragavan. As I'm saying that, he just got the first one, but I don't know how long he can hold this.
Got the first and the second. They have been dropping walls, and it hasn't been the Delhi player building the walls because he doesn't have infantry units. He's only got Gazi. It was actually Dragavan moving out with the villager, and he's building the walls around the cliffside. And a good timing to do this, but Gazis that were split off starting to get sniped out, taking a good bit of damage from that archer ball. Deniska doesn't want to take this fight. He's aging up now. Yellow and Deniska don't want to take this. Maybe a little misclick there from Yellow, but didn't lose any Knights for it. Advancement wing is on the way, so wants to get this up, wants to finish it as quick as possible, and still have Deer being brought in from the French player who is also thinking about Castle Age, it seems.
Yeah, Castle Age is now coming in here. Now, this is dangerous. Both players committing to a Castle Age means that you're spending a lot of resources on aging up and not on army. That's usually an opportunity for the opponent to make a timing push happen. And to be fair, Dragavan and Muhodo have twice the army size. Of course, value is a little different because on one side you have Knights, but 35 Gazi Raiders and 12 Scholars as well, that's no joke. You could actually do a lot of combat healing with many of those Scholars.
Yeah, I actually, at this point, I would be very, very scared if I'm Deniska and Yellow, if I kind of just took a picture right now. You mentioned it, both going castle is very greedy. But once the first one comes out, VES has to punish it. They have to go forward. If they wait a minute, it's going to be a completely different game. Upgrades are going to be through. Those archers from Deniska will shred the Gazi. They'll shred the spears and they'll shred the longbows. He could just A-move the archers and then let the Knights be the tank.
Now it's Dragavan and Muhodo that have to pull back. If they cannot fight this anymore, by the time they arrive, the opponents will have their Castle Age upgrades. And by the way, Deniska has he's got a really good resource bank even after aging up to Castle Age. Looks like longbows will push up, but House of Learning coming in for Mohodo. And he's got 13 scholars out there. This is an opportunity to just quickly close the gap, get those techs in real quick, and he's going to have a massive tech advantage if he can pick all those techs up so quickly.
This is huge.
But this is great.
10 villagers should fall from this. This timing is perfect. There's 37 Ghazi, and it takes a lot of units to respond to that. There's no way those villagers can get out and away. Too many longbows, too many Ghazis. And just like that, 10 vills down for Deniska. He's down at 38 villagers. Yellow, though, still sitting untouched for the most part. And he is French, who also should have some Royal Knights.
Yeah.
An upgrade on the way. Don't think any villagers will be lost over there, just some more units. And there's the upgrades from the archers.
Yeah, now you cannot fight anymore. This is the time for Dragavan and Muhodo to pull back. They cannot afford to fight into a Castle Age army, even with double the numbers. The fights would just be too costly for them. But really, they committed to this, and they managed to get a lot of villagers. I felt like it was a little dangerous for them to commit because they risk losing the entire army if they fight into a Castle Age force, but they managed to find some good value, and now, as they should, they're pulling back behind the walls, waiting for Muhodo to get those Castle Age upgrades. The problem
Dragavan needs to fall back.
Yeah, and Dragavan is still in Feudal Age. He's nowhere close to Castle.
And they need to fall back. They don't need to take this fight. They have a wall right there. Just fall behind the wall and give yourself time. You're in a really good spot. Delhi, it takes time for their upgrades, but they're going to have so many upgrades coming through. They have sacred sites, and he has a ton of scholars out, so he should have a quick securing of the relics as well.
Nice little conversion there, yoinked one knight. Relics are now coming in here. The problem for Volda Esport right now is that, oh boy, they're running through the knights here. Not the first time that this happens for Muhodo. This time around, he does get punished very badly for it. He's the only player in Castle Age. They still have almost double the army count, but it's 2 Castle Age armies against 1, and let's not forget, we're talking about Ayubid archers over here.
Yeah, I mean, it is one that upgrades have come all the way through, and Delhi...
Look at that red blob! Look at the red blob going into the enemy base untouched.
Yeah, there's nothing here to defend it. The archers for Deniska, just like we talked about the longbows for English, is very immobile, and he's moving on into the Delhi base. They're burning down the stables. They want to stop the only Castle Age player, like you mentioned a few times. That is their only worry right now. Just reposition the economy. Don't let the slow longbows do any damage here. But the Goldvilles were late. The Goldvilles were slow. Fight being taken. And there's a ton of those knights with royal bloodlines there, and nothing there to defend the longbows.
This is a big problem for Dragavan and Muhodo, because Deniska and Yellow can afford to lose one of the Castle Age players. They have a second one. But at the same time, if Muhodo gets beaten up here, Dragavan is not in a position to go to Castle and match this army, and this is not a fight they want to take under this DC. Even with all these Ghazi Raiders and a couple of Lancers out there, the numbers are just so much better here for E-Gear.
Yeah, I mean, it's fighting 2 versus 1 consistently. Dragavan wanted to push forward. He wanted to do damage, but his army's just too slow to do any damage. It got spotted out. He has a great mass. He's 95 military. That's more military than Deniska and Yellow have combined, but it's English. It's slow. He doesn't know where to go and what to do with it.
And it's a Feudal Age army, and it haunts him so badly. Feudal Age longbows against Castle Age Knights of the French, potentially with royal bloodlines, is just way too little. Now they're closing in from the north, and they have an opportunity to clean this up. Remember, numbers are still better for Dragavan and Muhodo. Eco count is dead even. Army count is a lot better, and that's a lot of longbows. This is actually a beautiful cleanup here. There might be a shot here for Dragavan and Muhodo to come back.
Archers should just continue to run away and through the economy and not take the fight here, do a little bit more damage, and then behind this, again, they're still Castle Age, they're still building on up. Muhodo, though, didn't take as much damage as expected here. King's Palace on the way, so those 75 units, they're about to get some Castle Age upgrades.
Things went from bad to worse here for Deniska and Yellow. It was ugly to have all these guys cleaned up, but now they're outnumbered 2-1, and if Dragavan gets to Castle Age, not only is he going to have all these longbows upgraded to veterans, he's also going to have that second TC, so they are going to start pulling ahead in terms of economy. And it's not like Muhodo took a big beating. Muhodo is at 53 villagers. That's kind of the same as the Niskaya right now. He has all these scholars out there. He's got all the technologies in by this point. He's got a bunch of sacred sites as well. And I don't know how you stop 70 longbows with veterancy over here when you only have essentially 50 units combined.
Yeah, Yellow is having a huge macro problem right now. He can't get to gold, it seems. Well, he's on gold or maybe trying to build a keep, but he's got 3,000 food in the bank. He could have so many knights out and about roaming and doing things. And you mentioned only having 50 units out. It's because he's got 50 units worth of res in the bank.
Yeah, well, absent of gold. That's the problem, right? He's got a lot of food in the bank, but simply not enough gold to work with. And these walls might just be a little too late here. Longbows are crossing over. Veterancy is just now coming in for them. And this is a great timing here. If you can hit these villagers before they start collecting gold, again, the French player simply isn't going to have enough gold to make those knights. Right now, the Niska and Yellow need a little time to regroup and get that 9 count back up.
Yep, just now starting to see 6 knights back into the queue. He's on that gold with the keep next to it, but he's got to go help his teammates soon. And there's not a lot of answers here for 73 longbows. Even with Royal Bloodlines, those knights will get torched.
The Lancer is going to the left side. I think they found the villagers. Only one villager getting picked off here. They don't continue going down. They don't have that scout to provide vision. So they couldn't find all those villagers building walls. Still, however, now it's double the army count here for Dragavan and Muhodo. In fact, it's getting closer and closer to being triple at this point. That's way too many longbows to deal with. Crossbows are now being mixed in to deal with the knights as well. On the other side, 13 Lancers from the Delhi facing off against 21 knights. This is getting progressively better here for Volda Esport.
Deniska hits Imperial Age, and that changes a few things. Also, what I love Muhodo's doing, he's walling off the east side. He's taking away a lot of these resources in the long term and taking more and more of the map for themselves. Oh, he went up. Oh, I love this. He went up with the Desert Raider wing. So it gives you like 7 Desert Raiders, I think, is what it is, every minute and a half or 2 minutes or whatever. It is crazy how many resources it provides. And that army number you were talking about them lacking, that helps significantly just by waiting, stalling, delaying.
Yeah, and Imperial Age is going to be a big thing here. However, Dragavan could think about it himself. He's not very far away from imping, and if he gets up to Imperial, they're going to be in a really good spot, because as long as this mass is alive, things will be good. Now, Spearmen will hold the front line here, and that is huge. Archers coming in from the other side, however.
And there's more knights in reinforcements. There weren't as many spears as I thought, and it seems like the spear count has been thinned out. Deniska focusing a few of those, and did Team VES overstay their welcome a little bit, as those are Royal Bloodlines knights. Deniska is Imperial Age, and their mass is starting to be thinned and thinned out fast.
Yeah, knights, they're doing a good job just shielding the retreat of these archers, and really, Dragavan has to be happy that he could pull these back at least, because this was about to spell disaster for them. I think he wanted to go Imperial here. For a moment, he had the resources for it, but now he's doubling down on army production, realizing that a counterattack is imminent. And again, as you said, these are Royal Bloodlines Knights. They're almost like Imperial Age Knights, and you have Imp Archers following them. This is basically an Imperial Age army fighting against full Castle Age troops. 33 Royal Bloodlines Knights. We didn't know what the answer was for that English army, and Yellow knew exactly what the answer was. Just keep making knights. He needed to get back to that gold that we saw for a while, and he just needs this knight count to stay healthy, stay forward and front for that archer mass, for those Imperial Age units. Imp Desert Raiders now. And the Imperial Age Desert Raiders provide so much extra benefit for those knight versus knight fights that we're seeing over on the right side. That is huge. Even just one camel debuffing the enemy cavalry means that the advantage for Yellow is even greater. Tower is just now coming up to provide network of castles, but it's going to be too little too late. Army count is dead even.
Villagers.
Elephants are coming up though.
Elephants can be that great unit to fight head-on against the knights. Villagers of Yellow just ran through the fight, clearly because the walls, you can see where some outlines are on the right behind the orange walls. They just tried to make the full trek through the base and just all died. I think it was 5 to 10 villagers.
All right. a bit of a reset coming up here, because let's not forget, Dragavan and Muhodo have 40 eco worth of a lead. If they can find a way to Imperial, their position is going to be great. Until then, however, the armies are just looking so much better for Aegir.
He's confused. He keeps on sending them. He's like, I'm trying to go over. It looks like maybe the woodline or the berries. And he's like, where are they going?
Oh. Yeah, he didn't scout the walls, right?
Mm-hmm. Knights diving through, but there's a keep and little short walls and a sprinkled emplacement in that keep. So a few of those lancers fall. And Deniska and Yellow continuing to extend this game. This is where I feel like Deniska usually is the one to make mass crossbows.
Up the stone walls. On a map like this, if you can get those stone walls going, it means that it's going to be difficult for Deniska and Yellow to use this cavalry mass. And again, if Dragavan and Muhodo find a way to Imperial, I feel like their advantage is going to be pretty substantial. They still have all 3 sacred sites, by the way. Again, in a couple of minutes, that could become a realistic win condition if they can hold them.
Yep. 3 TCs have been dropped now by Deniska, but I feel like it's just so late. They don't have much eco online at all. Where they're keeping the eco numbers even are things like this. Yellow just diving with his knights. There is not an army there to deal with it. Army's out of position, villagers out of position. And now there's knights behind the walls that could roam the economy.
If you play elephants, you gotta place wall in every possible position. Because if these knights ever break through your walls, you will never catch them with the elephants.
And that's what we're about to see here now. Farms starting to be idled. More villagers that should take damage. Not all of them got garrisoned on in. I think I saw some textile. Oh, actually, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think textiles at this point now with those villagers. So, yep, they are able to stay alive a little bit longer. But so much damage that Muhodo's taken here. And all of a sudden, these eco numbers up at the top are going to be looking a lot more even, especially with 3 TCs working behind.
And he aged with the House of Learning. He cannot just spam castles and mass produce villagers from those. He's down to 48 eco. Silver lining is that Dragavan was basically untouched for the last few minutes, and he's trying to get up to Imperial. He's about to get pushed by Deniskaya, though. And oh boy, this could be a terrible placement for that landmark. If Deniskaya finds this before it's completed, that could be the game.
It doesn't look like Deniska is pushing on in, but that being said, it does feel like this game has now turned back over again with the Knights roaming, with the TCs built up behind for Deniska and Yellow. It's just one that it felt like before they were super all in. Now they have trade. Now they have multiple TCs, each of them. Now they're actually reinforcing their eco with the military mass and the military hold that they've been able to do.
They are still down by 30 eco, and we also have 2 sacred sites for the Delhi, a couple of relics as well. So I feel like Dragavan and Muhodo still have that edge in terms of economy, but you're right. I love the addition of extra town centers here. Make sure that you have that economic dominance to go into late game with. I also love how they start setting up the trade early on, just to make sure that they have that fallback option in case they get pushed away from the gold. But at the same time, Dragavan is up to Imperial. And he still has a respectable force here. Quite a lot of men-at-arms, quite a few longbows to work with. And also, let's not forget about 6 elephants with a gazillion scholars. They still outnumber their opponents 2-1 when it comes to the army count.
Yeah. Knights are still behind enemy lines for Yellow. They've been chilling, waiting, watching in the very, very bottom corner and healing on up. But I'm sure he's just going to go right back into those Delhi farms once he sees Delhi's army move forward and fighting, which isn't going to be too long here. As they're starting to push through some walls and starting to group together here. Tons of elephants here with that English mass.
And it's not just the elephants, it's the healing power behind them that's scary. Dragavan is... I wonder if Dragavan will start sending resources to Muhodo to get him up to Imperial. Because if there's one player that benefits a lot from Imperial, that's Muhodo. He can pick up every single technology in the blink of an eye with all that scholar mass that he has. But he's still stuck in Castle Age, and yeah, there we go. 1,000 food being sent over, leveraging that English farming, trying to get the teammate up to Imperial as well.
And it shouldn't be too long. Delhi Imperial is not what Delhi Imperial used to be. It's actually super, super strong with how quick their techs come through, how quick of a timing that they get everything. And I mean every single thing.
I don't know if you want to push, though, if you're trying to get Muhodo up to Imperial. Maybe they just want to buffer this up and say, okay, if we are pushing, at least they're distracted and they won't counterattack us while I'm aging. But Muhodo is going on for Imperial, and remember, they still have a 50% army advantage, and that gets even better once you actually get the Imperial Age techs, which should be happen very, very quickly. They want to make sure they don't get pins, though, because I feel like Yellow and Deniske are trying to set up a surround here.
You can see Yellow did the all-army hotkey. Those knights on the backside just ran through everything and ran through all the villagers and just didn't kill anything. I was watching on the mini-map, just kind of laughing about it. Palace of the Sultan is on the way, though. Deniska is holding this right now, 1v2, but a lot of those longbows are attacking lumberer camps, or attacking the House of Wisdom. Half the army mass wasn't even there. That was a really good fight for Deniska, as it was basically 1v half of what was in his base.
You don't have a lot of knights here for Yellow, by the way. Now push on this gold mine as well. Remember, Deniskaya and Yellow are still behind in terms of eco, and you don't want to take this fight. Sure, you have royal bloodlines, but you're fighting into elite English spearmen now.
Yep, and villagers, look at where they had to run back from that gold, right through the longbows, right through the knights. The elephants now are fighting into the Desert Raiders, and the fight is being taken by Deniska and Yellow without the numbers, and Dragovan and Muhodo look like they are taking a winning fight. The spears over here on the side, while they may be losing, they're taking down knights, and that is a fine trade overall.
It's a cleanup, but those knights are as good as that, and at the same time, look at this graveyard of all these camels. These knights will not be able to contribute much with all that low HP they have, and at the same time, Deniskaya is getting cleaned up here. Now we have hand cannon elephants coming in here. New crossbows, new longbows on the way as well for Dragovan. That healing is going to come in clutch for Yellow. They need some time until those knights are back up, but how much time they have with all these elephants just stampeding through the base of Deniskaya, I do not know.
A forward keep being dropped. They want to draw their line in the sand, start maybe sieging down the House of Wisdom. End this game. They should continue to push through, and the thing I love is they're attacking in between the bases. Yellow comes in with the knights, and it feels like he's just not timing it when Deniska is actually fighting as well. So now Dragovan and Muhodo winning fight after winning fight. And forget the Treb down the House of Wisdom. He's got elephants.
That's no joke out there. And he doesn't even have the scholars out here to heal, because I think he's getting all the techs. He should be pretty much set on basically all Imperial Age techs in the next few minutes. And once that happens, he can pull a dozen scholars to heal these elephants back up as well.
I laugh at the town center fire on that top elephant. You can barely see its health going down. It's been tanking it the whole entire time. It will end up falling after this next volley. Oh, one more volley. But oh my gosh, the whole entire 10,000 health House of Wisdom ended up 17,000 health House of Wisdom fell.
At the same time, look at this. A gazillion knights jumping on a single elephant. But I guess bad news, you still have to face 13 of them with 3 more in queue. And I absolutely love Muhodo's stone walls on the right side. One way for Yellow to get back into this game would be to just launch a counterattack and just decimate the enemy eco. Make this game drag out a little, force the elephants to chase in a way. But Muhodo and Dragovan simply don't allow that. They have a very slow-moving army, and they are making sure that the opponent cannot exploit that by dropping stone walls.
Yep, it's just that, you know, you can't raid us if you have to do something to get through these walls. Even if they had Rams stuff taking down the walls, that gives them time to react to the raids. And they got to react to someone knocking on the doorstep, and it's not just someone, it's a whole entire mass of elephants, longbows, everything. And I love that Muhodo just sends the melee elephants over onto the side of Yellow. That's the perfect counter unit. Knights do not want to be diving into those.
Well, it's because Deniska doesn't have anything against this. He's playing Desert Raiders and Archers, and longbows will deal with all of them. These are now longbows with volley, they have incendiary arrows, they have the network of citadels buff, and now the elephants will just start diving deep here. I think the longbows could push up as well to start sniping the backline here. Yellow is looking for a fight here, though. They might be forced to take this fight here, even though it's probably going to be suboptimal.
Oh,
Knights
able to circle around onto the longbows. They kite back, though, rather quickly in front of the elephants. And then as the Knights run away, I don't think they took down more longbows than what they fell.
Yeah, in fact, I think it was like 5 or so longbows dying in exchange for a dozen Knights. And if you just keep 1 or 2 elephants on that side, you can actually send the rest of them into the base of the Niskaya. Oh boy, this is not a fight you want to take!
And this is where I think Mahodo just moves the base with that many elephants, right?
And now he's getting the hand cannon elephants going as well. They're just like slowly marching forward, non-stop firing. The army counts are neck and neck, but the army value is just so much better right now for Dragavan and Muhodo.
Yeah, this is one where I always laugh. Like the graph won't be the full true story either, because there's elephants here, and so that's where the numbers aren't always the truth when there's a lot of value there. Same thing for Yellow though. He had a ton of Royal Knights, and it's like, you know, their full value doesn't show on the graph either. But this game looks like it might be coming to a close soon, as Mahodo and Dragavan, they want to end this, and they can end this with that many elephants.
Are you sure? Of course you are. Like 21 elephants, 2 hand cannon elephants on the backline as well. They're going to take out all the houses as well. And Yellow is just now aging. We totally forgot about the fact that he's still Castle Age. Red Palace is coming up, but it's just going to be too little too late.
And it's coming up on like the most back corner behind their bases to maybe protect the trade line. But if Dragavan and Mahodo are at that point in time, the game is already over, and that is what we're seeing now. The game is over. Military counts almost back to being doubled, and that is the number 2, not including the value. Value's probably quadruple right now for Dragavan and Mahodo. There is no base for Deniska anymore. There is no House of Wisdom, no bonuses there, and that is what a Ubids is all about.
And now you just march to the base of Yellow here. He's going to be up to Imperial, and there's going to be a dozen elephants inside his base. Mind you, most of the eco of Deniska and Yellow is actually in the form of a trade. They have 40 or so traders. That's about 1/4 of their whole eco. And these elephants and longbows are actually marching towards that trade line on the right side.
Yeah, they spot out the Red Palace. They say, no, we don't want to fight under the Red Palace. That is a way to allow for a comeback. But if they just move on over to the right, they can just kill all the farming eco and do exactly what they did to Deniska's base to Yellow here now.
And now it's just a death ball that's unstoppable. I really love how Dragavan and Muhodo played this. This kind of a build is very situational to a map that can be sectioned off so well, like Cliffside. But they have actually leveraged the, I guess, features of this map, and they have built a composition that's just straight up difficult to fight off. Whereas when you look at Deniska and Yellow, they have a good general purpose composition, but it's not the most optimal composition for a map like this.
Yeah, if this were Dry Arabia, a lot more of an open map, it would have been a lot harder for Dragavan and Mahodo to execute this strat, but that's probably why they waited and pulled this strat on a map like this and not for Dry Arabia. TC gets taken down, Cannon's still alive and fine. It will start taking down the rest of those buildings. Elephants turn and fight. Longbows are taking down the Arbs that are sitting under the keep. And again, trade's just constantly favoring VES.
And now they find the trade. I don't even know if VES knew about the trade up until this point. Now they do. They can just start marching towards the trade and wipe it out. They're going to focus down the castle to deprive the opponent of all that production bonus. And this is the final hurrah from Yellow. Elite Knights, this is the best he has, and it's just way too insufficient.
And the elephants, they're just waiting as the traders come. They're like, all right, who cares about mobility? You're walking into me. I'm just going to sit here and wait, and you are just going to get absolutely slaughtered, decimated, and numbers are falling and falling fast for Team E Gear.
Yeah, this is just at this point, I don't think it's a matter of who, it's a matter of when. Landmarks are slowly going down, and sure enough, you can't eliminate one player by taking out their landmarks, but if you take out all 6, as you can see at the top of the screen, now that's enough to win a game.
That is enough to end that game, but I feel like Aegir should forfeit before that happens. And there it is. Game number 1 goes over to Dragavan and Mythology.
There were some very dicey moments for them here, but at the end of the day, I feel like they got to the stage that they wanted to. Once it was Imperial Age for both of them, there was basically no way for Deniska and Yellow to win this game. Again, we go back to those compositions. Deniska and Yellow had a good general purpose composition, which is a good way to play this game until the walls come up. But once those walls were up, they just had no opportunity to use that mobility. And when it comes to straight up direct combat, there is basically nothing better than English longbows and Delhi elephants.
Yeah, it was a really, really fun game to watch. It really felt like both sides could have won it at different opportunities, but overall, Dragavan and Mythology able to split Yellow and Deniska's bases from each other, really not allowed them to help, walled themselves off, and took advantage of the army compositions.
Well, that was a hard-fought victory here, 40 minutes. But Dragavan and Mythology win this game. This is actually their first win in the group stage here. They got 3-0 by the Canadians, but then again, as we talked about, that's a very, very difficult matchup. And you look back at these moments here, the game started out with these casual feudal age skirmishes. In fact, we actually saw a lot of these feudal age skirmishes out there. I think one thing that characterized the style that Volda eSport was playing with is all-out aggression. They never had this moment where they felt like they need to play defensive. Even if they tried to age, they always were aggressive and sometimes maybe a little overzealous. They didn't get punished for it in this game, but that's something that they need to think about going into game number 2.
Yeah, and this is one where we saw some of the Civ picks. We saw the map, and then get this one out of the way. The question's going to be, what are the next Civ picks and what is the next map? As that is kind of, I always love getting into the later stages of the series. It's exciting. You don't know if these players are on their comfort civs or on a civ that they're needing to just get out of the way in between the next.
And as we go through these little highlights here, there were quite a few of them. And I feel like, again, the thing I highlighted just now, Mythology is aging in this very moment, in this little clip. Yet they are still in the enemy base looking for things to destroy. And this can be a very double-edged sword. If it works out, it's spectacular, but this also provides opportunities to slip up. And there was an instance where Dragavan almost lost his whole longbow mass being caught off guard in the middle of the map.
Yeah, I really feel like the drawback for Team Aegir was them going castle together. They both went castle age at the same timing. Meanwhile, the other side's both sitting feudal age, which means they have 3,000 plus worth of resources in army that you don't. And that's where, right when that happened, you saw the Ghazis and the highlight clip right before this just burn down the 2 outposts, take down an extra 10 villagers, and it was just over from there. But that was, you know, you can kind of see the rest of these highlights, the bars at the top. Even at this point, you can just see that military lead that VES was able to hold. They kept this military lead for just an extended time in this game and never really let it equalize without having an extra eco behind it.
And that was a big factor. In fact, I think Aegir was doing a really good job just dropping those extra town centers, understanding that they need to catch up. And this was the moment that I kind of highlighted. There were some scary moments where those longbows almost got caught off guard. That's something that you need to pay attention to going forward. But it's not going to be a thing here. You're not going to have your archers caught off guard in the middle of the map on a map like Archipelago, because that is where we're heading here. A fundamentally different map from this one. This is a staggered, slow-paced land map, and now we're going into naval combat. Fundamentally different. I don't know what to expect from this, though, because I don't even know if Aegir played Archipelago before. They did not play this in the group stage. I would have to go back to the logs of the qualifiers to check if they did. But Japanese, from what I've seen back in the past on water maps, water-heavy maps, I should say, Japanese has been one of the big carry civilizations out there. Chinese and Jushi were the main takeaways, though. So, looks like both these teams felt like they needed Chinese or Chinese variant, but both of those were taken away by the opponents. Let's see how this game looks like going into game number 2 on Archipelago. HRE and Japanese versus the Order of the Dragon and the Abbasids.
And we're starting here now. VS spawning in on this west side. E-Gear spawning in the east. Dragvan Ramen purple and pink versus Deniskin yellow, green and yellow. And yellow is playing as yellow.
Okay, I appreciate that. I truly appreciate it. At least the viewers won't be confused for at least one game. But let's talk about this map here, Dapston, because this is not the Archipelago that you've seen back in the past. I remember when this game first came out, Archipelago was a map, and it was just complete RNG. The island sizes were weird, the way that you spawned was very weird, and in many ways, the outcome was essentially decided by the map generation, not actual player skill. But now, this is a very well-defined generation. It's actually pretty much a preset 4 little circle islands in the middle, 2 sacred sites on those little atolls, and then each player basically has 1 island to, I guess, fall back onto. A better way to look at it, though, is when you look at right versus left, Deniska and yellow, they have an island behind them that they can share. Same goes for Dragavan and Ramen on the far left. And then there are 2 neutral islands that can be contested by the teams. Those are between 2 opposing players.
Yeah, and a lot of times what you'll see is, you know, as the game unfolds, if it gets to that point, you know, Castle Age goes down, they're needing to expand out to their other islands. They'll drop a keep on one of those islands to make sure they've secured it on up. And having HRE, you're going to most likely put a relic inside that keep because each island, if you haven't noticed yet, has 2 relics to secure. So a lot of nice gold income that you can get in the long run.
All right, I think when you look at these maps, though, one of the key indicators when it comes to early strategy will be the dock placement. If it's at the back, you're probably focusing more on eco buildup and fishing and slowly building up your navy. Whereas if you put it on the front, you are trying to just be 1 step ahead of your opponent, try to be the first one to arrive at a combat ship to the enemy base. So the fact that we have most players placing docks all the way back tells you that, you know, they're not really interested in rushing the enemy. Instead, they want that slow progressive build-up. And as a side note here, Ramen is not going for a dock at all. He's just rushing Feudal Age altogether.
He ends up deleting his scout as well for some extra pop space. And this seems very odd in my eyes. Like, yes, you get Feudal quick, which inspires all your eco, but like you're now behind substantially. And being behind in villagers or fishing ships, it really, really starts to add up over the course of time. Where they can kind of make up for it a bit is how cheap Japanese fishing boats are. You know, his teammate can make up for it, but even 3 fishing boats at this point is very, very scary. That's 10% extra eco, essentially.
I truly wonder if this is trying to be a semi-fast castle build from Ramen. He pulled away the villagers from gold, so I don't think he's just going to go straight into castle. But one thing to highlight here is that there are 2 relics on the island behind him. There are 2 relics on the island next to him. If he can sneak those out with the Ragnites, that's going to be a big buff to his eco. Now, the risk that you run with this is, of course, that, you know, first of all, if you don't have water control, that's not going to happen. But I'm starting to see that instead he's dropping a dock on the front. And remember, if you go for a Dark Age dock and a Dark Age fishing eco, you delay your Feudal Age. And that forward dock, that's going to be the first dock in this game to pop out a combat ship and start harassing the Niskaya.
Yeah, but this is where, you know, most players at the high elo, here's the reaction you're supposed to make from this. You saw 6 fishing boats from Deniska. All you need are 2 docks to hold all your fishing boats. So yeah, you might get idled for a bit. You wait 5 seconds. You wait for your springled ship or your own galley to pop out, and then you jump back out with all your fishing boats, and their military ship has to go away, and you are now still up your 6 eco.
Yeah, it's an interesting change up here from Ramen, though, because maybe the idea is just to say, okay, I know I'm going to be behind in fishing boats, but part of that gets offset by the Aachen Chapel. Remember, this map spawn you have on this map, the little island you start with, it basically guarantees that every single villager you have is buffed by the Aachen. And at the end of the day, you're still the first player out there with a combat ship, and that might be the momentum that they're looking for.
Yep, and we can see where that combat ship is starting to make its move across the map. Hasn't been able to scout out any fishing, hasn't been able to scout any dock, and we actually saw Deniska following that with his scout. He knows exactly where it is, and yet again, 3 fishing boats can easily just jump on inside. Waiting. And there it is. So jumps inside, doesn't take any damage, and then again, still behind this, the rest of the fishing boats are working. It moves on past, and he goes back to work. So it's not really providing that much value here, as he just needs a few more seconds, and his own chapel will finish, and then feudal age boats will start coming out for himself. And Ramen is not going fast castle. He's nowhere near here. It looks like he's just trying to get this timing push. 3 more boats jump inside. There actually might be 1 loss here. Oh no.
Yeah, I think one thing to highlight here is that this is not your classic 1v1 water build when players build up a couple of fishing boats, then rush feudal for naval combat. Basically every single player but Ramen went for multiple docks and a gazillion fishing boats. And I think that's part of the reason why this early ship opening didn't work out as good as maybe Ramen would have hoped for. Because you have multiple docks and the fishing eco is spread out. Having said that, he's still the only player with a combat ship. There is 1 in queue for the Niskaya, but you already have a demo, you already have a Hawk as well for Ramen. And now he's piling up a lot of food here, and actually, the player that's got a fast castle is not going to be Ramen, it's going to be Dragavan.
Yeah, so the whole idea is Ramen's making the sacrifice. I'm not going to build any ships. I'm not going to build feudal age ships. I'm going to let you get to fast castle. And now Japanese will be the one that is trying to do some things out of the map with castle age timing. But again, what I'm scared for is if the military ships fall, then now Deniska and Yellow should have full control of water. And even with Dragavan being castle, you got to get upgrades, and you have to have your own fleet to be able to move out and do things.
Yeah, I wonder if Ramen's purpose here is just to run circles around the enemy. Because it's a risky approach to fast castle like this. And when you do that, you could get punished by the enemy navy if you take direct fights. If you're Ramen, you just want to make sure you distract your opponent, because this way, you're not going to have Dragavan facing any combat ships for the next few minutes.
Well, we just saw 2 fall, and now that means Deniska and Yellow's numbers start to climb. And where Ramen was kind of like 1v2ing, he was on different spots. Now we're just seeing boats get cleaned up. And the problem when your boats get cleaned up and you don't have a lot of return damage is that the boats just go back to a dock and get back to full health. So then they come back even stronger, where it was 1, 2 boats. Now we're going to see 5, 6, 7 boats start to build up. And the upgrades won't matter.
Gate, it's being built so slow. If you're rushing castle age, oh no. Why? Just why? Like, if you're rushing castle age, it's life and death to get up to castle age in time. 3 villagers is just way too slow. Ramen cannot delay that much.
Well, I know why. He actually, I don't mind it because he needs his own fleet out. Going castle doesn't mean anything if you just get upgrades like armored hull. You need armored hull to mean something. So he's sacrificing, his timing to get more of a fleet out so the upgrade works. It's like, you don't get royal bloodlines with 2 knights. You want royal bloodlines with 15. That's kind of how this is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the concern is that the combination of these 2 things is just way too slow. You're right. If you get up to castle age but you don't have any resources, it's useless. But at the same time, and now Dragavan is actually sending resources to Ramen out there. I think they want to get Ramen into castle age as well now. But the problem is that they're getting outnumbered very badly in terms of fleet. It just took so much time for this floating gate to complete. Right now, you're not seeing any benefits of this soon-to-be castle age just yet. And the moment you're up to castle, you're going to see Deniska and Yellow commit to this because they need to fight before the upgrades come in.
Exactly, and even still, Ramen has 0 fishing still. He doesn't have any extra bonus. The castle age finishes, and it's like, okay, are you moving out to grab relics now? It's not like a land map where you can just start moving out and walking out. You need a transport ship. You need to have even more resource investment to secure the long-term eco play. And slowly, not only do we see Ramen and Dragavan grouping together here in the middle, We see yellow starting to make a little bit of a move down south, and we see Deniska kind of starting to move in the center. So we'll see. I think he wants to make sure that the relics aren't being taken is kind of his main goal here.
Yeah, I think so as well. Remember, Dragavan can pick those relics up just as much as the HRE players can. He has the Shinto priests out there. And when you look at Deniska and Yellow, they both went for a transport ship. Now Yellow is aging. Remember, he's opposites. He cannot really expedite this. So that's an opportunity for Dragavan and Ramen to do damage. But you can just see that Deniska and Yellow want to make sure that those relics fall into their hands.
Oh,
but given
this
the
is going to be great.
circumstances, I think they're just a little slow here. They're giving a lot of opportunities for the Dragavan to leverage that castle age.
Yeah, I still feel like he's not getting too much value from it. He is built up to 10 sprinkled ships and should get the upgrade through. Yellow, though, what I like is he's going military wing, which if he's able to get a transport ship drop with those camel lancers he comes out with, or camel riders that it comes out with, then it forces a ton of reaction onto the land as well. And now we're seeing Regnitz out from Deniska. Ramen and Dragavan, though, they're moving across through the center, just like last game, where they're fighting together.
This timing is terrible here for Deniska and Yellow. They're both aging up, and they're both very far away. And now you have a full fleet, 11 Hawks, I guess, sprinkled ships here for Dragavan with the upgrades. And I love the composition, by the way. One player going archer ships to snipe demos, the other one going for the Hawk-style ship. You also have demos here for Ramen as well. But the general idea is that you're playing a composition. It's not every player making a fleet that answers everything. They are using a complementary composition. So as long as they stay together, this fleet is extremely difficult to push into.
Yep, and they're just playing it delayed now. You can see Dragavan and Ramen, the further they get through this, the better for them as it splits the fleets apart even further. Great timing here, but Demo ship pops out.
Oh,
and a great, at least, first connection. It doesn't kill anything, but Demos immediately get exploded to take down that forward dock. Demos get sniped on out, but a Demo trade.
Oh, that was huge. Without that demo trade, the demos would have just flooded Deniska's ships. Deniska only has 2 galleys, but at the same time, they can have vision on those lumberjacks, and now the lumberjacks are being pushed away. And I just don't see enough archer ships on the other side. There is nothing that counters demos coming from from Ramen.
Yeah, Yellow was super slow to react with his fleet. Now he can start cutting off reinforcements, and they can do a little pincer movement behind this. But do they have enough to close this on out? We can see Dragavan now starting to turn. Ramen starting to turn as well. Demos are going to keep popping out of the docks. They got to be careful. Demos coming from either side. They don't know where to go. Connections starting to happen. A lot of fleet getting heavily damaged. You can see the split screen to see the bottom fleet of Yellow.
Demos coming in, they're looking for that one connection. Indeed, maybe Ramen and Dragavan got a little overzealous. We talked about this in the context of the previous game. They are playing very aggressive, maybe a little too aggressive at times, and now they got pretty badly punished for it. They got surrounded from 2 sides. Army count, or I should say navy count, is still in their favor, however, and now they're pushing that fleet from Yellow down south. Nice little connections with the demos as well.
Yeah, and Yellow's fleet starting to get pushed back. Dragavan just did a full turn and said, all right, I have enough to take down Yellow, and let's do exactly that. But timing is key here. Again, the villagers on the land, I don't know if they're getting spotted out. They have to reposition over to the other side wood line. He needs to get further and further across. And this is, I already mentioned it earlier, keeps going down on those middle islands is so crucial. We just saw the wood lines for Deniska and Yellow. Well, the wood lines for Ramen and Dragavan will be running thin. They will have this timing soon that they have to move across, and it delays your military production on the sea so heavily.
That's the big thing. If you time this right, and you hit that wood line just when it's about to run out, or when you hit the water in general, you can prevent your opponent from getting any access to wood. Yellow and Deniska already started migrating to the neutral islands. That's not something we're seeing from Dragavan and Ramen. They're just now making transport ships. And that's actually a bit of a slip up here from Dragavan. He never got the relics despite having a bunch of Shinto priests.
Yeah, and relics are starting to be snagged at the top by Deniska because he's on that island, built a monastery on there. I wouldn't be too surprised to see Yellow do the same in the south side. Still, Ramen and Dragavan grouping here in the center and keeping that mass built up. Ramen still feudal age though, and hold my food for yellow. We see it
He had a
again.
lot of fishing boats, and he's got enough gold as well to age. I think he probably could and should age. And I just want to highlight real quick, Deniska and Yellow did a really good job getting the foothold on both of those central and neutral islands. That actually means that they will have 2 relics from the north, 2 from the south, and they also have 2 at the back. They basically secure 6 out of the 8 relics available on this map.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Yellow just drop a secondary TC on that island that he has to keep at. Just go ahead, get himself some extra eco on that island as far as villagers go. Make it to where, you know, maybe the fishing, if you lose it, won't matter as much. You can secure up your gold for yourself, since the gold on your main island is starting to get shot down by some Springald ships, and you're losing villas and you're not reacting.
It's a lot worse. Oh, the villagers are stranded. They need to get out of here. The transport is barely
The
alive.
transport almost went down.
Look at the surround, though. Look at the surround. 2 fleets coming from 2 sides, and Deniskaya is nowhere to be found. Is he gonna be too late for this?
Villagers still trying to get on that middle ship. Oh my, fishing boats! 10 fishing boats go down from those demos. Look at the eco numbers. It is all of a sudden heavily tilted in Dragavan and Ramen's favor. Ramen has fishing boats for himself again, and guess what? His deep sea fish are gonna be nice and close and very, very full because he has not been on them this whole time. But this is where now the game starts to get crazy. Villagers quick
Yellow
built an
is
outpost.
aging. Yellow is aging, but he lost so much eco out there. The fishing boats and the gold as well.
This outpost goes down. The villagers don't have anywhere to go. They need to pull a transport ship back over here as fast as possible. And that's exactly, it's not just a transport ship. They're pulling the full fleet back this way.
Ramen was in feudal the whole time, by the way. He's just now aging with the Ragnitz Cathedral. And they still haven't taken the relics. I think he's going to get the relics for his own Ragnitz. But on the other side, the other players have secured the majority of those islands with the relics already.
Yeah, he can only get 2 on the back island. They need to migrate to the back island, though. We talked about the wood line. I felt like that was a couple minutes ago. Well, now their wood lines on their main islands should be fully out.
And now look at Deniskaya. With all that gold income from the relics, now he's thinking about Imperial as well. Ramen could go fast Imperial here too. He's piling up a lot of food and gold. I would wager that that's the plan for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy because now we've gotten to the point where water kind of somewhat got given up, not really. It's like they're still fighting for it, but it does feel like Dragavan and Ramen have a strong foothold on the water. But Deniska and Yellow made the moves for the outside islands way sooner. Yellow starting to try to deny this, and oh my gosh, those are all villagers in the transport.
Gotta pop out. Just make a run for it.
He's not looking. Everything just fell over there. Island goes down. That siege workshop he just built gonna be absolutely worthless. Meanwhile, they still have their fleets in the centers, but Deniska and Yellow doing a great job to try to keep them split. They're on the north side, they're on the complete south side. Which one are you gonna go defend? Demo ships, though.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful, but now we're having a Carrack out there, or I guess I should say a Xebek here. Not something that you see very frequently for the Abyss. It's beautiful demos, though.
More and more demos. You always got to be careful when you're sieging down docks for this exact thing. The demos have such a short pop-out time to where you're sieging them down. It's so easy to get connections if you look away for just a split second. Deniska, though, his fleet is now respectable. He's circling around. Ramen, he has to read macro where his fishing is, remove all his fishing boats, and it feels like E-Gear has now kind of retaken advantage of this timing. It felt like they were struggling for a bit. They were taking a lot of damage, and the ecos, they're still behind by some eco, but they have the islands and the majority of islands.
I think the attention to detail pays off here for Deniska and Yellow. They were the first ones to expand towards the neutral islands, and they secured those relics. Whereas when you look at the other side, Dragavan and Ramen just now secured the second relic for themselves. Having said that, you still have a bunch of ships circling around that fishing eco for Deniska, and 20 eco difference is no slouch. even though you do have all those relics out there for Deniska and Yellow. Now Ramen is thinking about Imperial. Love this little landing.
There's the Camel Rider drop. I thought it was going to happen earlier. They couldn't make it happen with the way that the water was at this point in time. But now Camel Rider's in the base. Fight being taken north of Deniska's base, and it's orange, or sorry, it's purple versus green, and the purple is closer to the green base. So that means reinforcements could be coming out, but the mass is so big.
There is no reinforcements. The demo is coming in from the flank. Now reinforcements coming in from Dragavan. Demo looking for a connection. Nice little splits, but the demo might still get a kill. Two demos connect, and now it's the yellow fleet closing in.
Yellow helping out as well. Even if these are trades, they're kind of fine with this S, where this game has been beforehand. It was so hectic. These are Imperial Age ships now, so even trades are fine because now they have the tech advantage. They get to remass up, and look at how much damage those Imp ships can do now.
It's just game, I feel. Ramen doesn't have a fleet. There's barely anything left for Dragavan, and they are also an age behind compared to Yellow. They need some miraculous demo connections here to make a comeback.
Yeah, Doc's starting to be taken down. You can see pop cap right now. There are no houses available in the spot to have units even pop out. And the further that these boats go into the middle of these two bases, the less docks there will be, the less land you can actually gather from. And as boats pop out, they should fall.
Yeah, Eco is still nominally better for Dragavan and Ramen, but they don't have all those relics out there. And speaking of relics, Deniska is sitting on 5,000 gold without a single gold miner. That just tells you how good of a job they did picking up all these relics out here. I don't know. Yeah. I don't really see this at this point for Volda Esport.
Yeah, they had that timing earlier that it felt like they had their positioning point. They had numbers, both military and economic, but now those numbers are being flipped upside down. They still have some ego.
We talked about this. All they need is good demo hits, and Deniska doesn't have a single archer ship.
Big splits, but the splits won't matter with how many demos there are. 4 Springald chips fall, another 3 gonna get connected on, and Deniska's whole fleet just got obliterated by demos.
What an oversight. He could easily afford the archer ships. And at this point, when you have such a big advantage, you split the map, you might just play 2 separate 1v1s. Just go for a full ship composition, you can afford it. But without it, there was nothing that prevented those demos, and now Dragavan and Ramen are picking up momentum here. They still need to find their way to Imperial, though. They will be 2 versus none when it comes to Imperial Age. Ramen is, I think, is thinking about aging right now. They will have to age at some point.
Yep, Deniska hitting Imp. The problem now is, though, as time goes on, that Swabby on the backside island for Deniska will be working hard as the Order of the Dragon, so we'll really support that eco behind it, give him a ton of food income, and there is the Palace of Swabby as well for Ramen, so he said, all right, I'll match you there.
There's a bigger problem here for Dragavan and Ramen. It's the neutral resources available. You're out of wood on your starting island. You're starting to run low on gold. So you're now splitting that single neutral island behind the 2 of you between 2 players. Meanwhile, when you look at the other side, Deniska and Yellow have 3 neutral islands. They have so many more resources to work with. At some point, Dragavan and Ramen need to find a way to contest one of those islands.
Yeah, as time goes on.
That's trade.
Yeah, there is some water trade going on. They've been, I saw like them having 6 to 8 ships up earlier. I just didn't know how efficient the route actually was. And looking at where they're trading to, it doesn't look that efficient at all.
Yeah, it's long term it might pay off, but I don't think this is a map where you need a lot of water trade. You have so many more neutral resources that you can just live off of them for so long.
A lot of demos ready and waiting for Ramen, and it's mainly Imperial Age ships, so the demos work out perfect to take these down in an efficient manner, resource efficient manner for sure.
Yeah, there are no galleys here whatsoever. Now the Xebecs are a pretty mobile cannon ship, but you still don't want to run into a bunch of demos like that.
And you can see demos trying to close the gap now. They are moving on forward. trying to kite, yellow kiting as best as he possibly can as he moves on away, but the demo's finally closing that gap. First one's does not connect. Second one's get taken out, able to take down one of those Imperial ships, and now Deniska's there with the galleys to help on out, and none of those demos really end up connecting. Only 2 Imp ships went down.
Yeah, that was oh my, ships catching fire now from the incendiary arrows. Demos coming in as well from yellow too. Now the numbers are looking so much better for E-Gear. Now their demos are connecting, and this might just be it. Castle of the Crow coming in here for the Dragavan, but they are once again reset to such a tiny fleet.
It just feels like this is a little too late on these Imperial Age timings. Deniska and yellow, their fleet is just so much stronger. A lot of those demos just can't even get close to connecting now with all of those galleys from Deniska. He's just mass galley, and they're flaming galleys.
They do have Carracks though, but they're slow. And that's actually where these Xebecs get very interesting here. Demo once again getting a connection. Xebecs are quick. They can chase this Navy down, and that's exactly what Yellow and Deniska are doing. And Ramen and Dragavan just have nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's almost reverse of what we saw at the beginning of this game. Now Deniska and Yellow attacking in between Dragavan and Ramen, making it harder for their 2 armies and 2 fleets to fight as one. And now we can see the military numbers have been diminished to under 50. We see Deniska and Yellow basically tripling the army on the other side as units and ships just fall and continue to get shot down as they pop out.
It's the timings. It's all about the timings here. Now that Dragon and Ramen are up to Imperial, they should be on par with the techs, but by the time this happened, it's just way too late in terms of the Navy. They're still trying to come back into this one, and a lot of these cannon ships from Yellow are heavily damaged, so maybe, just very maybe, it still looks like a long shot right now for Volda Esport.
Yeah, you can't forget they got 36 extra traders there up at the top for eco numbers, but those traders now are starting to get taken down. The back island is going to have ships on it too. A lot of those fish are going to shoreline fish, not deep sea fish, so very inefficient economy, and also going to start getting taken down as well.
Atakabune now joining the fray over here, but a lot of them are heavily damaged here, and sure enough, they can take out some of those Xebec, but you don't have the firepower at this point to one-shot those demos, and the demos just finish you off. This has to be a game for E-Gear, and again, you gotta credit them for being active and securing those islands first. I feel like this is where that game started to swing in their favor. They went for those islands early, they secured the relics that way, they secured a bunch of extra gold and wood, and they never had to invest in stuff like trade because they had so much more wood and gold to work with.
Yeah, it really feel like VES lost a lot of their timing. Right when the movement to the other islands happened, you're idled off of wood for quite a significant time, which means all of your military ships production goes right down the drain. Yeah, you might have some food coming in, you might have some gold coming in, but yeah, you need wood to make these ships.
And now the Atakabune are doing their best to hold this off. Fishing boats are being rallied to try and somehow repair these, but the demos, yeah, that's gotta be it. That has just gotta be it.
As 4 or 5 of those popped out, they just immediately got demoed down. And Deniska and Yellow still just sitting here in between the bases, taking down more docks, taking down more reinforcements. Just feels like Dragavan and Ramen, they know that they're trying to hold, but they're just throwing resources down the drain. Speaking of resources, Deniska just sent 3K on over to Yellow.
Yellow somehow has 3 crossbows. I don't know where they are. I don't know what they are for. But I mean, at this point, everything is in their favor. 140 army or navy, whatever you want to call it, versus just 20. Again, those timings to the neutral, yeah, those timings to the neutral island just made it all happen. The relics were very quick, and I feel like if we, at the end of the game, if we look at the overall resources collected, that's going to show you why this game fell into the hands of Deniska and Yellow. Even with all these Carracks going down, they just have all that momentum. And game number 2.
Series tied up already. It is 1-1, and this is just our second series of the day. Crazy back and forth. Again, another one that just felt like it could have gone either way consistently. Leans one way, then it leans back the other, and then it flips right on upside down again.
Wow. Just wow. And really, we talked about this game before the game. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but in a previous game, one of the things I highlighted with Dragavan, and in general Volda Esport, Dragavan and Ramen, is that sometimes they stayed aggressive despite the timings not necessarily being there. And they were risking getting caught off guard. We've actually seen them being punished for that in this game. In particular, they decided to dive very deep with that Navy. And then they got pinched from two sides. I feel like that was the first time they lost momentum. And that is what was leveraged by Daniska and Yellow to secure the neutral islands.
Yeah, and I mean, just another just super, super exciting back and forth there. Crazy second game of this series. And I mean, if these series continue like this, we got a lot of excitement here for the rest of the day. And so now they will be getting that third game all set on up. We'll get the map choice here in a second. We'll get the Civ selections here in just a little bit as well. But first, some of the highlights from the game before here, as this is where early on Ramen and Dragavan were really in the driver's seat. It felt like Ramen went early feudal, was having a bunch of military ships. Daniska and Yellow were able to pick up these two galleys very early on, which gave them a little bit of more freedom in their fishing eco to start here.
Again, one thing to look back at was that weird-ish Castle Age timing that we've seen from Ramen at the beginning. It definitely caused some distraction, but I mean, this is the kind of pincer that we are talking about over here. They have a dominant Navy here, but they do get surrounded over here. They did their best to split the opponents, but at the same time, slowly but surely, they got surrounded. We've actually seen a reversal of that later on in the game, where Dragavan and Ramen were able to clean up Daniska and Yellow like that. But this is probably the window where they felt a little overzealous. You have Dragavan in Castle Age, you gotta go for those relics. And at the same time, this is where you may just want to play a little bit more of a contain game and make sure that you play for a bigger purpose, securing those neutral islands, getting that map control. I felt like they wanted to be very aggressive and finish the game right here. But after they got cleaned up, it kind of started snowballing the other way.
Yeah, this is a very close back and forth series here. And again, this was just game number 2 we're casting over here, and both games just felt like it could be 2-0 either way. And instead, we're going to be going on to a game 3 of a best of 5 over here. Now getting to see the next map. It's a classic aggressive map, coastal cliffs. Just imagine a dry Arabia, but a little bit smaller coastline with the cliffs. Really just kind of narrows the field and doesn't allow as much room. So it's a very aggro focused map.
It's very similar to Dry Arabia, a map that is still available in this series. It is just a lot more condensed. That little patch of water is simply inaccessible. It is just there to essentially reduce the size of the map, but it's separated by a cliff, so you cannot really access it. So in a way, you're playing essentially mini Arabia.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you can see the civs kind of match that in a sense. You see a lot of Mali and Delhi on this map, which we see split between the two sides. Even though there's only 2 sacred sites, Delhi is just known for that feudal aggressiveness, able to take map control. They can wall off and segment off this map really well, and then also have 10, 15 scholars behind it. We saw how strong Delhi was in game number 1.
Well, Delhi and Rus, so it's your classic Knights plus Archer combo from E-Gear. I wonder if they're going to play a little bit more aggressive. Whereas on the other side, Malians and Chinese, it's a great combo if you want to play late game, or even like mid-late game, beyond the mid-Castle Age, essentially. But whether you get there or not is a big question mark, I feel, because this map is usually pretty quick. Resources are difficult to defend. In general, the map size is small, which means that if you're doing damage, you're likely doing a lot of damage. There are not a lot of fallback options for players. So I wonder if that composition is going to help Volda Esport on a map like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that the big thing to spot out first with a map like this is where Molly's gold veins. Sometimes you can see some really awkward secondary golds, and having a first, forward gold to start out makes it a very, very easy spot to focus your aggressiveness to. But at the same time, China, you can't let them boom up and play their own game either. They can, either play the all-in game, or they can just play the hey, I'm gonna go 2TC Song or Song Dynasty and become this very, very scary economic boom.
I'm looking at the draft right here. I'm wondering what the alternative plans would have been for these teams here, because Byzantines, when you look at Volda Esport, now that's a civilization I love for this map. It's understandable why it was sniped on the other side. I'm not exactly sure about HRE, but one thing that you have to consider with these drafts is that you pick 3 civilizations and 1 gets taken away. So you basically have to set your draft up such that any civilization that gets sniped away leaves 2 that actually synergize well together.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is also one where, now that we've seen 3 games in the series, we know there's going to be a 4th one. You can see a lot of these civs starting to get out of the way. We have dry Arabian Pigeons Valleys left, which are 2 again. I would say just Pigeons Valley's not plain Jane. It's almost like the jousting fields of the old day, if you're familiar with that one. It's kind of almost like 1v1s where you're split, but you also can see some cheese builds where you try to, wall off one of the players and then just 2v1 another.
Well, remaining maps, Pigeons Valley and Dry Arabia. I would love to see a Pigeons Valley game out here. But there's a chance that we're just going to have Dry Arabia here for game number 4. We're going to have at least 4 games to settle this, because right now it's 1 apiece. It's a full best of 5. Winner is going to play a decider game tomorrow. It is going to be against the Devils team, that is BLB, Gotkovsky, and Jigglypuff. And the loser is going to be, unfortunately, out here in the group stage. But so far, we've been seeing a very closely matched series.
It definitely has been a crazy back and forth. You could throw a 2-0 on either side. I wouldn't be surprised with how the games have gone, and that's why a 1-1 makes perfect sense. HRE not being allowed, Byzantines not being allowed, and now we're about to get into this 3rd game. Let's see if one of these teams can start to kind of get a leg up on the other, kind of start to make a little bit of a spread for themselves here.
Big game coming up over here. One of the teams will move on to match point here on Coastal Cliffs. We haven't really seen a map like this in this series so far. We had Archipelago, we had Cliffside. We haven't really seen this open land map style, and definitely not an aggressive one like Coastal Cliffs. It's a small map. It's just like Dry Arabia, but much, much smaller. And I feel like both of these teams have been playing very aggressive so far. It's going to be interesting to see how they open this map. We head into game number 3 here in Volda Esport versus E-Gear.
And checking in on these spawns, it's Dragavan on the west side as Molly in purple, Ramen playing again as the Chinese in the color pink, Deniska playing as Rus in the color green, and finally Yellow playing the color yellow as the Delhi. And so again, we've seen Team VES make some little subs over here. It's been Dragavan and Mahodo first game, and then Dragavan Ramen, and now Ramen getting another shot at it. He wants to get a win under his belt over here.
They need these games. I think, especially because the remaining maps are Dry Arabia and Pigeons Valley. Pigeons Valley is a bit of a wild card. It's not a well-established map. It's not a meta map. So when you look at that, it's always danger zone. So whoever is one up in this one is going to feel very comfortable, because they might just avoid Pigeons Valley altogether, or in general, you're going to be the one having that game up before you get to that uncertain territory of Pigeons Valley. And of course, you also have Dry Arabia there, which, given the performance of these 2 teams, could also be a coin flip between them. But I feel like, considering those 2 remaining maps, you do want to have, that one up going into game number 4.
Yeah, and looking at these spawns, you can see Mali does indeed have that forward gold. And looking at where those secondary golds are, we can see the highlight here from the Observer Vodka. We got triple golds in one single screen, and those are essentially the secondary golds for Ramen slash Dragavan. Very kind of front forward, easy to focus too. So a lot of easy kind of spots to attack that no real safe resources behind the base other than a little bit of food.
You know, looking at the composition here, or the potential composition for Deniska and Yellow, I think it's a pretty clear setup. You have the Delhi here, aggressive civilization, probably, I would assume it might just be an archer play here, supporting Rus Knights, although I could also see that Ghazi Raider plus Rus Archer combo working out. On the other side, though, I'm curious about the Chinese. It could just be a full Jugenu play. And I wonder how Malians will be played here. I think that's the biggest wild card here. How is Dragavan going to play Malians? Are we going to see Warrior Scouts with Pro Scouts maybe to ferry in some carcasses? Or is this going to be a semi-fast castle? I think his strategy is the wild card going into this game.
Yeah, they have a lot of different options that we can kind of see here. You can kind of, you've seen some players, especially with where the boar is on this map. I wouldn't hate to see Ramen drop a forward Borbican on the Sacred Site and kind of have a 2-for-1 where you deny the Sacred Site, you get a boar for yourself for the long run. Really kind of takes advantage of one of the drawbacks of China, which people like to punish them in their mid-game food transition. They kind of struggle quite a bit, and having a nice boar under your belt early really relieves a lot of that pressure.
Golden Gate, Dome of Faith coming up here. And I think that Dome of Faith is the first thing to look out for. I would be surprised on a kind of condensed map like this, one where you expect a lot of aggression. I'd be surprised if Yellow was committing very heavily into Feudal Age Archers, going up with the Dome of Faith. If they wanted to play super aggro, I think they would be leaning more towards the Tower of Victory here.
Yeah, and as well, I mean, I kind of expected the dome build anyways. Everyone's been leaning towards that a little bit further just because of how strong people have been talking about their Castle Age tech build. You can get so many scholars while still forcing your opponents to play this kind of Feudal Age play. And then all of a sudden, you click Castle and they blink and you've gotten every single tech. And that's really where the Dome of the Faith strength arises, just as the timing that the Feudal Age goes, and you get more and more scholars, and all of a sudden everything's free.
Mansaquari and Imperial Academy on the other side, although the Barbican is coming up as well. That's a beautiful Barbican spot. You talked about that 3-pack of gold mines plus deer and berries as well. This is exactly where you want that Barbican to be. Just secures a lot of space for these players out there.
Yeah, lovely location. We see triple scout from Deniska starting to burn the houses. And so, you know, while him being Rus, you might be like, why did he make 3 scouts? It's like, well, first, he didn't have to idle his TC for these, but also he might be playing a little pro scouts play later on, and stealing some of those deer from your opponent's side could be huge. So that's one of the things I kind of want to monitor throughout in this earlier Feudal Age is it going to be that pro scouts play from Deniska? 2 houses already falling.
This is a big thing here when you look at the scouts opening. Usually, you don't have that much torching power for Deniskaya, or in general for players trying to torch down Malian houses. But in a 2v2, it's completely different because you can bundle your scouts together, and suddenly you can get rid of a lot of these houses out here.
Yeah, it almost feels like the old days of having the animation canceling scouts, where all of a sudden, you know, players would go 3-4 scouts early and you could just kill villagers, you could kill anything and everything out there. This time, they're just using their torches very effectively. Mali, though, going with a little bit of extra scouts themselves, and those are warrior scouts from Mali, not regular scouts, so we'll force those away, but not before, was it 3 houses that got burnt down?
Yeah, it's a lot of damage done, and at the end of the day, sure enough, you can rebuild those. But it's not just the resources that you know, you have to spend on those new houses. It's also the fact that you have to spend a villager to do this.
Yeah, and I saw an upgrade coming through on that hunting cabin from Deniska. I'm wondering if it's wheelbarrow or if it's pro scouts, and it is that pro scouts play that I was wanting. Not only that, it's going to be a pro scouts and a fast castle play together.
Oh wow, that's intriguing. It feels a little risky because pro scouts requires you to have map control of some sort. And if you play fast castle, that by definition means that you cannot really contribute to that map control being achieved. So you're basically reliant on your teammate in actually securing that map control.
I think it's almost like what we saw the French do with the pro scouts earlier. He's going to secure just the first few from his side, make it to where he can snag deer under his town center, and then utilize, you know, his castle to be castle as well, and retake that map control. And they haven't been punished at all. They've been the ones kind of being more of the aggressor. We've seen Dragvan doing some nice micro with those warrior scouts and the healing, but yellow can always pull back those Gazis, get him healed on up with scholars as well, who has 6 scholars already starting to build.
Yeah, I was wondering if Dragavan is going to go warrior scouts here, because that's actually a very cost-effective and versatile way of contesting map control and getting some potential eco benefits from that as well. Remember, these warrior scouts could also play pro scouts and bring in some carcasses, while also not being super expensive and providing you with light cavalry to deal with the Ghazi raiders. But Deniska is about to get the Castle Age here. He had a little bit of a shortage of gold, and that's going to delay his Castle Age timing by a bit. At least he's going to have a bunch of backup food to work with. And this is starting to look really good, I feel, for E-Gear.
I think Deniska misclicked a ticket.
Oh no, that could have been it.
He's got 100. He had 150 stone that he's had for like 2 or 3 minutes that he had for no reason.
You're right, and that explains why this Castle Age is delayed. Still, at the end of the day, he's gonna be in Castle Age, and his teammate is still able to secure enough map control to get the Sacred Site. I feel like this combination is just working really well right now.
Yeah, and it feels like where Ramen has been making military, he hasn't had a presence with his military. He hasn't been moving out. He hasn't been doing anything with it. And now we finally see them move out. There's a couple spears, but
not enough spears.
He's not reacting either, and there's scholars here to heal it up. There's not enough spears, and as he moves out, he gets wiped. Him and his teammate not talking a little bit on different pages here.
They are, and there was no scout accompanying this force. This came out of nowhere here. Yellow had a scout. He knew fully well that this army was approaching. He knew that he could take this fight. There was no scout accompanying this force of spearmen and Jugenu, and they just got intercepted out there. There were more spearmen out there for Ramen, but not all of them were in that group, and now they're diving in here. Right now, Yellow is playing a 1v2, and his teammate is in Castle Age coming up with horse archers. Imagine how strong they will be when Deniska comes online with the horse archers.
Yeah, he was playing the 1v2 or the 1v1 against Dragavan really well. Ramen decided to come help and support, albeit too late and a little bit of off communication there. Lost his mass, and then, you know, Yellow goes and takes advantage of Dragavan moving forward, not helping either. Kills a few villagers, takes down a pit mine, it looks like. A few more spears come, and those should get taken out as well.
That's the problem, right? Spearmen technically counter cavalry, but you need at least reasonable numbers of spearmen. You won't fight off 15 horsemen with just a handful of spears. And now the pit mine is gone. Love how Yellow is just playing this safe. He's not risking anything. He's pulling back the moment he got his value, I guess. And he's not overstaying his welcome. He's retaining this force. And again, his job is not necessarily to win the game right here. His job is just to be annoying and do damage until these horse archers arrive.
And that horse archer number already climbing to the double digits. We see Grand Fulani Corral being dropped, a good amount of cows behind it. But look at all the relics right now. And then let's check back in a few minutes and see how many relics are going to be left over. Because Deniska could drop a there it is. I was about to say, you could drop a monastery. And this is, I always love Roos when they drop the monastery, they get enough passive gold to make the warrior monk, and then all of a sudden it's only passive gold they're dealing with. It's just, that's all they need. And it supports more than enough for their whole entire eco, blacksmith upgrades, eco upgrades, everything they want.
And again, I think the most important thing here is that this is a fast-paced map. You cannot really afford to play 2 TCs whatsoever because you need immediate returns. He's trying to Volda on the villagers. He's trying to Volda on the vills.
makes them move back. I love that he goes for like the super aggressive relic, although he's not going to be getting it here. It's just always, it's fun doing that. Especially if you're able to just slowly pull it back, get some aggression. Getting those forward relics or the contested ones, the ones behind should be easily, and you know you're securing those.
And again, I just want to get back to the point of immediate returns. Relics return the investment very quickly. You make a monastery, you make a couple of warrior monks, and you're going to get those resources very quickly from the relics. Which means that you get a massive boost in a fast-paced map, exactly what you need to finish the game quickly. Now the horse archers move in. They need to be careful with all these spearmen being nearby, though.
Yeah, they definitely do indeed. It is all cavalry for Yellow and Deniska. We have the Gazis, we got the horse archers, so if the spears are able to close the gap, they will do damage. The problem is, if they're able to close the gap, those horse archers got range, and both cav units got a lot of mobility.
And it's an interesting setup on this map, because this map is not necessarily one where you need an awful lot of mobility. It's a pretty condensed map. But at the same time, as long as you micro your forces well, and as long as you leverage that little extra advantage of mobility you have, you still will be able to look at opportunities to hit the enemy eco before the Jugenu can catch up to you. And exactly like this. You dive in, you potentially snipe that stable if the Jugenu don't come in time, and then you just disengage. These choke points make it difficult to fight direct engagements, but these little skirmishes that Yellow and Deniska are taking is exactly how they need to play this map.
Yeah, they look like they might be wanting to turn here. There are a lot of spears. If they focus down the spears early, they will be okay, but you never want to be fighting horsemen versus spears. Scholars kind of left out to dry. They will be the sacrifice here.
Yeah, you're just gonna sacrifice them right now. I don't know. I think Yellow was trying to get to Castle Age here, and they probably should. Remember, these Spearmen and Jugenu, they cannot overextend. If you go too far out, the Ghazi Raiders will just dive your eco, or the Horse Archers will. And you can actually see that Ramen and Dragavan, they're playing a lot more cautiously in here. I think if you're Yellow, you go to Castle Age and you switch to Men-at-Arms, or you can just slap a gigantic wall across the map to make sure that those Jugenu don't come through.
And it's going to be Deniska slapping the gigantic wall across the map. And that's not just a regular wall. That's going to be a reinforced wall being Roos. And so not the easiest to burn on down either. Sofa.
Compound of the Defender coming up.
The Sofa number builds up quick as, you know, we have had that full cow boom come on behind it. So Dragavan will have a scary eco, even though he doesn't have that eco number necessarily. Ramen is actually the one with the highest eco number and the highest military count as well.
This is a good timing here for Dragavan and Ramen. They do have a scary force. Jugenu and Spearmen in large quantities like that, this is a problem. Horse Archers can snipe the Spearmen, but then again, the Horse Archers, they have to stand in a position to fire a volley, and when you have that many Spearmen out there, they close distance. Even just a couple of pokes from those spears will make life very, very difficult. I think once you get to Castle Age, if you're Yellow, once you start getting Men-at-Arms out, things could get better. But until then, this force of Jugenu and Spearmen are still scary.
Wall trying to be built, but should get denied. Horse Archers starting to step up, kite a few more units. But this is where the timing is key. Yellow getting all of those free upgrades in as the deli. Deniska floating resources for Castle, maybe even thinking about Imp here in a little bit.
Oh, wow. That would be... I think that might be a mistake. I don't think on a map like this you want to imp. Second DC, somewhat understandable. It had a bunch of stone anyways from that potential misclick you touched on. I don't know about imp though. I think you just double down on this. You have two players in Castle Age against just one. You have a decent economy and a scary army as well with all these Horse Archers. You get a dozen Men-at-Arms out there for Yellow, and I think you can take a fight.
Yeah, agreed. I think you have to stay all in, you know, and defend this big push. Once you have that, you will be on great footing to just end this game. Yellow is making the transition into those heavier armored units, having more of that front line. Imperial Palace, though, on the way as well. And I love the Imperial Palace on this map because of how small and condensed it is. It provides vision of the whole entire central point. You can see everything. Obviously, with the ability, you can see all the villagers, but it really just allows no mid-map stuff to be taken without, you having knowledge of it.
Imperial Palace now coming in. Love the landmark. One of my favorite landmarks out there. I think, especially in team games, one of the most underrated landmarks as well. Map is being sectioned off here, preventing that cavalry raid. I absolutely love it. You're up against Gauzy Raiders and Horse Archers, and one of the best ways to keep Horse Archers in particular at bay is walls. They simply cannot get through them, and that just means that you can run around and or prevent them from running around and secure most of your eco. Walls are basically complete on both sides. Now I wonder what Deniskaya is up to. Because now you could start thinking about maybe an Imperial that you touched on. He needs to do something with those resources. Spend it on army or, get decks, go into Imperial, but he needs to do something with that.
Yeah, has a ton of gold income coming in with 0 on gold, and I feel like it's pretty similar for Yellow over there, having not a ton on to gold because he doesn't really need a ton on the gold being Delhi.
Nice. I was going to say nice wrap, and then for a moment it looked like they were just going to run past each other, but this is a nice cleanup by Yellow. Doesn't seem like it's much, but every time you get one-sided engagements like this, you're happy about it.
Yeah, it very kind of starts to tilt the scales. Speaking of tilting the scales, Deniska and Yellow finally have taken a military lead for themselves.
It's also the army value. Let's not forget about that. Chugenu and Spears are nice, but they're not high-value units. And I think the concern is that they are not going to be good against the Gulam. And I don't think Dragavan or Ramen have seen those just yet. If they start mixing in crossbows, this becomes a good composition for them. But this could be a nasty surprise for them. If they get jumped by a dozen men in arms, especially when you have 14 scholars healing as well, I don't think their army is capable of fighting that off.
Yeah, and that scholar number is looking real scary. I would be interested to see how many technologies Yellow has finished or almost finished at this point. Meanwhile, the other side, we can see some of that granary transition has come in, and the Griot Bara is on the way.
Yeah, the trenches have been dug, and players haven't been very aggressively fighting off against one another. And that just means that Dragavan said, okay, I'm going to go Imperial. They're also going to set up trade here. Remember, you don't have an awful lot of gold that's safe to work with. They're definitely setting themselves up for a long game. I feel like this approach leaves them a little exposed short term. Imperial and then a big commitment to trade, that's just screaming for a counterattack. But we'll have to see if that counterattack ever comes, especially because you're sitting behind walls and half of your opponent's army is in the form of Horse Archers. Now we have Mangonels though. And I feel like Deniska and Yellow will have at least one good opportunity to do a lot of damage with this full Castle Age army just when Dragavan hits Imperial.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all about these timings. Are they going to punish it, or are they just going to try to match the timing themselves, build up their own resource bank and not allow a timing push to come on through? You can see Yellow trying to drop a defensive keep, moving on over with his Gauzy mass to fight these Sofa trying to burn down the walls. They're
Gauzy Raiders still repelling them. It's going to come down to those Mangonels to a certain extent. If those Mangonels can get some good hits on that clump of Chugenu, it's going to get real ugly real soon. Imperial Age now hits for Dragavan. So this is almost a do or die now for Yellow and Deniskaya.
I mean, numbers are just so even still, and you talked about it, the value might not be there, but it's still hard to push into that spear mass with that many cav.
Yeah, I feel like the problem now for Deniska and Yellow is that they are going to face 40 or so Sofas with imported armor and elite upgrades. And they don't really have anything that really deals with that. They have a bunch of Gauzy Raiders, but those are Castle Age units. They have a bunch of men-at-arms, they don't do a lot of damage against the Sofas. And Horse Archers, they're also going to be Castle Age troops.
The thing about the Horse Archers now is it feels a little bit safer for them to just sit there and keep attacking with 6 Mangonels behind this. The Chuk mass can't really step up and fire on the Horse Archers without just having to worry about a bunch of rocks falling on top of them. Still surprised.
Elephants now coming in here for yellow, though. We've actually seen this in game number 1, and it was a very reminiscent game to this. Map sectioned off, narrow choke point fights, Elephants will reign supreme. In that game, it was Dragavan and Ramen who pulled that. I'm curious how it's going to work for yellow, because he's just now starting to build it up. Deniske also is floating a lot of resources. I think he's trying Imperial, but now Ramen is going to go Imp. I feel like this is too late for Deniske and yellow. If Ramen also hits Imperial and this whole army turns into an Imp force, it's a problem.
They still, I feel like, just don't have an answer for the Mangonels, though. The Horse Archers are going to always stay circled and surrounded. They might not do much damage to Sofa, but those Mangonels will make a melee mass stay together. Gulam still be in the front line. Sofa trying to dive around the Mangonels, and the Chook stepping on up. This engagement is finally going down, and who will be the one to come to the close? 3 Mangonels still fully surrounded, able to continually firing down. Dragavan and Ramen pushing on forward.
The spears just absolutely eviscerated all the horsemen. They've butchered the elephants as well. And the horse archers now need to kite back. They have to ignore or avoid the Mangonels at this point. They cannot stay there. And remember, behind this, Ramen could go into Imperial here. He's got a lot more resource bank to work with. Yellow is basically out of food, out of gold. It's going to be a bit of a reset, but I feel like the casualties were just so much bigger for Deniske and yellow. Dragavan has 17 more Sofas in queue here. He's still in Imperial, and now Ramen is going to go to Imperial as well. I feel like when it comes to sustainability, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, and I always, looking up at the eco numbers, Dragavan having, almost equal Vil numbers compared to the other side. Well, he has all those cows under the Grand Filani working. And that is so many Sofa can just be in the queue consistently without having any eco, to worry about.
And there is going to be the Great Wall Gatehouse being placed. The stone walls are being built as we speak. And once the Great Wall Gatehouse is complete, you're looking at 2 Imperial Age players against none. Army counts are neck and neck, and this puts Deniske and yellow into a very precarious position. If they ever choose to age, they'll be exposed for an attack immediately from an army that's just as big as theirs, but also has better tech.
Yep, they need to try to match up that tech, and it looks like Deniske is not too far behind it. Delhi's going to struggle a little bit more. Don't really have the same kind of boom behind it, actually. It surprisingly has a somewhat equivalent villager count now, with having those keeps starting to work as well, though. Horse archers circling back and forth. There's the Spasskaya on the way. Looks like he's trying to build it near that other sacred site, but needs to watch out for any other military. I don't think, I'm not sure if the Imperial Palace can spot this on out, or if it's just outside the edge of the vision. It's like 2 tiles away.
Deniske is playing with fire there. That could have lost the game for them. An Imperial getting just stuck in there and potentially having all the villagers cleaned up would have been catastrophic. Still, the army count is double right now for Dragavan and Ramen. In fact, I think the concern is Yellow's army count. He's got 22 army on the field. Couple of men-at-arms, couple of Ghazi Raiders, that's basically it. You look at the other side, you have a bunch of passive resource income, and now this Spasskaya Tower gets revealed. Castle's gonna have to be cancelled here by Ramen, but they're going for the sacred sites now. They have a 7-minute countdown on this sacred site count, and if they cannot break through the walls, they'll try to win with the sacred sites.
This is a huge blessing for Deniske over here that they're taking this fight. It allows them to just relieve pressure. You mentioned Yellow's army. Well, now Yellow has timing for his farm transition that he made behind this to actually start going into military instead of just being empty resource in the bank. But looks like Yellow is actually going to go imp here and then start to make units. Imperial Age should be dropped here in just a second.
There's a big problem for him, though. In that previous engagement, he lost all of the scholars. He's down to 4 scholars, which means that it will take forever for him to get those Delhi techs.
Huge fall.
They're contesting the sacred site, though. 7 minutes on the countdown. It is getting close to becoming a victory condition. The men-at-arms are on stand ground, though. They won't really fight back here unless you beat up the specific unit, because they just need to stay on site here. Horse archers looking to flank on the other side. Stone walls are coming up for Ramen. And once the stone walls are up, the horse archers become obsolete. I think if you're Deniska, you're starting to pivot into Streltsy, because the horse archers, now you don't need mobility, you need brute force power.
Yep, and that's exactly what he is starting to queue up. Spears and Streltsy. Wouldn't be too surprised to start seeing him get a little bit more siege out and about too. But this game is now extending. Lines in the sand have been drawn, keeps have been dropped, and ecos are set in stone. We could see both sides trading 25 plus traders on either side.
87 sofas is scary though. And I think this is a big difference maker. When you look at Volda Esport, they're 400 out of 400 pop and in Imperial Age. From now on, it's right-click forward and trade units. That's not the case on the other side. Yellow is still building up his forces. And sure enough, he's going for elephants, which is going to get scouted immediately. I think this is exactly what Dragavan needs to do. There's still a massive hole in the middle of the map. Just send the cavalry in and make sure that those elephants cannot take direct fights. The game number 1, where the Dragavan and Ramen won with elephants, they had the map fully walled to prevent such things from happening.
Yeah, and this is where you can already see the Sofa starting to cause a destruction. Elephants too slow to chase. Spears too slow to chase. You can't chase those units. You need more wall segments. You need more choke points for them to struggle to walk on through. More Sofa diving on forward, taking damage from the keep. There's only a few elephants, and there's too many Sofa here. Looks like Dragavan and Ramen not pulling the trigger. Don't think they have enough to close out the game, though. And Deniska, 4 mangonels again, so starting to reinforce into more and more siege. And what scares me is when you start getting the mangonel upgrade in Imperial Age, those things become like old mangonels.
Is that going to be a factor, though? Mangonels will have to take direct fights, and that's a lot of cavalry out there. Everybody in Imperial now, remember, Sacred Site countdown is gone. The Sacred Site to the north was decapped, so that victory condition is now gone from Volda Esport, but they still have 90 or so Sofas. And the biggest concern is that E-Gear is still not up to full population. They need a little bit more time to build up those elephants.
Yep, Yellow has been getting closer and closer, but still not at the healthy number he wants. But Dragavan and Ramen have been dragging their feet, going slow, not making the moves to fully close out this game. And I feel like they've given time for Deniska and Yellow to get back on their feet, to recuperate, to you know, they stumbled and now there's no stumble anymore. Military numbers getting closer and closer to maxed out for the side of E-Gear. Yellow is not too far away from Max Pop himself, and he's been the last one and the only one we've been waiting on here for a good little bit.
Still, I don't know if stone walls are complete for Deniska out there. He's got the Spaskaya Tower, but yeah, these are only essentially fortified palisades here. Now, Spaskaya Tower is a very tanky landmark, has 10,000 HP, but it's still going to be short-lived against that much cavalry. Biggest thing, though, these are still palisades. If you break through them, you get all that cavalry into the enemy backline, it might just be game.
Yeah, 2 villagers trying to repair this. It's not going to be enough. If I'm Deniska, I try to drop another quick layer here. They need time for the army to come on over, but Siege is grouped with that army. It's walking at a very slow pace on over that way.
And oh no, these walls were never completed. There was a major overchop, and this is what Dragavan was looking for. If you're Dragavan, you just right-click. This is actually a mistake, torching down all these buildings. I think he just A-clicked, but he's missing a golden opportunity to just run by and destroy everything that Deniskaya has at the back.
Yeah, there could be so much damage into the trade, the markets, the gold vein villagers instead. It's just a few buildings getting taken down. Might actually lose some of that relic gold that he's been generating. But the nice part for Dragavan is every sofa that gets lost, he's got more than enough res to recoup this up. He's got 25 in queue right now, and he's got 7,000 extra res to sit there in the bank.
And now the Spearmen are pushing in as well. The sofas, some of them got detached and they're hitting the back line here. I still don't think he will fight into this.
No, there's so many Streltsy that were getting untouched, having that, you know, static time where they get more attack speed, more damage over time. They were just shredding everything in their path. And then the Mangonels, again, weren't getting touched either.
I really feel like Dragavan should have just sent all that cavalry to the back line. Even if he gets cleaned up, as you said, he's got so many resources, but it would have done massive damage. In fact, when you look at the overall eco, even that small group he sent back did a lot of damage. Yellow's got basically no gold to work with. Deniskaya has limited gold income as well right now. Definitely not enough to sustain mass Streltsy. Yet, you know, Dragavan retains 90 or so Sofas. I understand he didn't want to take that direct engagement there, but I feel like he could have sent a lot more to the backline and did a lot more eco damage.
Yeah, Volda Esports has a definite lead as far as the eco goes, but the military ball is what I'm scared for. It feels like E-Gear has this ball that is just almost unstoppable. Need the siege to move on up, fire across that back line, but the elephants, look at how tanky they are. They're just tanking as much of the Sofa as the one set of the Sofa are trying to circle back around, but the Mangonels finally firing off. Remember, the Spasskaya was there. It's going to cause a pathing issue. You can't get on top of those Mangonels easily. One does fall, but there's still 3 there.
I feel like Dragavan and Ramen are doing the very thing that they're not supposed to do, taking direct fights here. And now the Sofa numbers are down to just 40. They might have just enough to clean this up. Remember, the eco from Deniska and Yellow are much weaker. But I feel like they've taken the worst possible engagement.
And finally, we see a few of those Mangonels fall, but there's still 2 left. The hand cannoneer mass doesn't want to step up into that. And all this time, Deniska and Yellow, they're fighting under 2 keeps and a bombard. I think that's a cannon emplacement on that outpost. Oh, no, it's a springer emplacement on the outpost. But still, it looks like Dragavan and Ramen can hold with all the static defense they have there, even after the awful fight.
Exactly. This is not a okay, they're in a decent position because they did this. They're in a decent position despite doing all this. They had a golden opportunity to send all that cavalry into the enemy backline, and the Streltsy or the elephants aren't able to catch those. Maybe there's a counterattack, sure enough, but again, at the end of the day, you have so much mass of cavalry that you could have just shattered the backline entirely. They've done a decent amount of damage, but this is not the kind of game that they want to play with this army composition. And remember, we've looked at this in game number 1. A classic composition, cavalry plus ranged, is good on open maps. But once you have the map sectioned off in a smaller or tighter map like this, these more unorthodox compositions like elephants and Streltsy, or elephants and longbows in game number 1, those become a lot better in direct engagements. So Dragavan and Ramen, they need to find opportunities to stretch out the map and try to hit the eco. These are still palisade walls. They can break through to the south with 15, 20 Sofas and hit the eco again. That's the thing that they gotta do.
And as you say that, I'm pretty sure about 10 Sofas split on into the south side, but we still have a main battle here in the middle. Mangonel still on the backside, but getting focused down by the bombard. And it looks like Deniska and Yellow are finally starting to run out of steam, slowly losing this front mass. They do not have this unstoppable ball. They lost that diving double keep, double outpost, and now Dragavan and Ramen are finally pushing through, finally doing what they need to do to end this game, to close this game. They've had the lead, they've had the numbers, but they have not been able to end it yet.
Again, the question is how long can Deniska and Yellow sustain this with a somewhat fractured eco at the back. Having said that, Dragavan and Ramen, we talked about the lack of efficiency for these fights. They lost a lot of Sofas fighting into elephants, and now you look at their gold bank and it's gone. The mineable gold is basically gone from the map, so it's all about the trade now. And it's going to get increasingly difficult to replace all these Sofas. At the same time, these elephants are very tough to kill. They're expensive, but the resource retention on them is just so much better. I feel like, again, these are not the kind of fights that you want to take if you're Dragavan and Ramen, even with the Musafari gunners helping out.
The good thing is look at the Q difference between the two teams. So that's the only reason why I say taking these fights is fine. You got 3 elephants, 4 elephants in Q, and that's it. You have 4 spears, 8 Streltsy in Q. On the other side, you have 70 spears in Q, and then you still have, you know, the Sofa and the Musafati Gunner buildup, and 8,000 wood, 5,000 wood to sell. They can sell the res for gold if they need, but they're just taking these to take the trades. It's fine. They just need to continue on the onslaught. Make Daniska and Yellow continue to use their resources. If they're using their resources, they're not building this up, and they aren't able to get to that max pop number that Dragavan and Ramen should never be able to stray away from.
And really, it's that massive resource bank that Dragavan and Ramen built up that's carrying them right now. They had like 6,000 food, 6,000 gold each. And that's part of the reason why they can still continue this push. Daniska and Yellow never had that resource bank. They took really good engagements, but there was just nothing behind it. Once they lost the initial layer, there is just no reinforcements coming in. Daniska is tapping out here. He had no army to work with, and it is Volda Esport moving on to a match point.
Wow, what, I mean, just again, this whole series, crazy back and forth, felt like the other side had the opportunity to take that game. E-Gear had the momentum going for a while, but Dragavan and Ramen held strong, turned it back around, went over and pressured the other side and took the game on over. You can see that graph. It just both sides for Ramen. The pink graph was just sky high, was able to go Song Dynasty, never have any damage over on his way, was able to mass up a ton of spears, a ton of shooks, and that mass never really got fully taken out. You see that big dive at like 20 minutes, but everyone lost that mass, and he still had 50 plus at the end of it.
I think I prefaced this game saying that, you know, you look at Chinese and you look at Malians, it doesn't strike you as your ultra-aggressive early mid-game combination. It's a late-game combo. And at the time, one of the conversation points was that how is this combination of civilizations going to be utilized early game? This is not a map that usually drags out this much. It was a 40-minute game, after all. But obviously, now that we've gotten to the later stages, these civilizations do come online. The Malian passive resource income is immensely valuable. Population, as I like to say, is a resource in late game. So having that passive resource income is very valuable. They have a lot of good late game techs as well. I feel like the problem, in a way, for Daniska and Yellow for the majority of the game was that they were always kind of on the back foot economically. They never had this rapid eco build-up, which would have resulted in a massive resource bank. So even though they took some good fights, especially that one engagement with the elephants against the Sofas, they just never had the resources to replenish those losses, or at least not to the extent that we've seen it from VES.
Yeah, and even when we saw those fights go in their favor, you know, a good example is right here. They win a fight, they have some numbers, they have definitely the military value on their side as well, and then they go and burn 3/4 of a stables and don't really get any villager kills. They don't really get any value. Then they take this fight that's, you know, spears going up against horsemen and cav, and now they got to back away. And from here, this is where Dragavan and Ramen are in the positioning point that they go, all right, we got through our toughest spot. Now we just need to play our own game.
And now it's actually interesting because we've actually seen 2 very similar games here. Well, absent of the Islands game, which is just like fundamentally different for a land map. But at the end of the day, I think we are starting to see a pattern over here. Teams like to drag these games out, and so far, late game has been the domain of Volda Esports. So if you're Daniska and Yellow, you're trying to finish these games quickly, because so far they're 0 out of 2 for late game.
So far, indeed. Although it feels like they've had some close opportunities, they just haven't been able to put all the pieces together in the right manner. You can see here again where it was just too easy. Once that Ramen and Dragavan had that buildup, they just kept the pedal on the metal and just never let off the gas.
Well, it looks like we will be given a Pigeons Valley game here. I'm really hyped for this one. I don't know about you, but Pigeons Valley has been one of the most awaited games or most awaited maps for me. I haven't really seen a lot of games being played on this one. And it looks like we could be well set up for some late game shenanigans here with the Rus Abbasids facing off against the Chinese and the English.
Yeah, and Pigeon Valley, it's one where, as you can see by the picture, you're separate from your teammate by some 2 rivers. And from there, you also have, you know, this middle of the ground pack that's split on by the wood line. So it's not the easiest to grab the middle sacred site, and kind of splits you off from your teammates.
This is your late game map, basically. A lot of opportunities to wall. It's kind of a weird one because this middle segment is kind of blocked off, and then you have these waterways allowing you to potentially get some ships going, and you can have a lot of shenanigans out here. I don't know what to expect from this.
I will say, I think I saw VES play this map in maybe the qualifier. I don't know. It might have been against Devils. And I want to say that they did some proxy archery range shenanigans in the middle behind the wood lines. Not sure if that'll happen again. Obviously, it changes up depending on the civs that they're playing. But I honestly think it might have been ABBA Rus, or, you know, do some early cheese with ABBA. You can do the, whether it's the siege tower or whether it's some early rams, and then have some archer support from Rus with the proxy base like they used to do.
Yeah, last map would be Dry Arabia, by the way. So we would actually get, you know, the most classic map that you can possibly get, Dry Arabia here. Which, I mean, given these 2 teams, who knows, that could be a 5-hour-long game as well. But here on Pigeon as well, this could easily be a grind fest. I don't know what to expect, though, because so far these long and grindy games kind of fell in the hands of VES. English and Chinese are no pushover, though. It's so weird, because you look at English and Chinese, I think one of the issues that you face with that combination is that you don't have very population-efficient late-game units. You are making a lot of, let's say, longbows. You're making a lot of, I don't know, Juginu hand cannoneers. The population efficiency isn't really there like you do have for lancers, for elephants. Kind of a similar thing for Rus and Abbasids, but I think the Rus have, you know, the knights out there. Abbasids, maybe late-game camel archers. We've seen some of that in 1v1s. So I feel like the population efficiency in late game is just much more in the favor of the VES team composition.
Yeah, I will say the China have the strongest hand cannons in the game. The extra, what is it, half range that they are able to get with their upgrade. And then it also is dependent. You can't forget about some wind guard units if English decides to go that route. But I think if we're getting Imperial Age on this map, I think both teams kind of will find themselves in a point that they're fine with. Like if you go into this seeing both civs and going imp, you're like, I like English imp, you like China imp, Rus imp has their own positives, and same thing with ABBA. But I will say that all the games we have that have been close, they've still been crazy back and forth. There's been a lot of feudal pressure, but then kind of a standstill in the mid game. So let's see if that kind of continues to happen in this game number 4. Let's see if E-Gear can get the feet back under him, can tie up the series and extend it to a game 5.
Well, just 20 seconds left to go. This has definitely been a nail biter, and so far that has been the theme for, you know, basically all of these series or the games that we've seen today. I think that's one of the cool things about today's series so far. It's not just that the series were neck and neck, the individual games were also neck and neck, and we could easily see another nail biter here going into game number 4. VES up 2-1 here, match point for them as we head to Pigeons Valley.
And here we go. Let's see these spawns. Dragavan and Ramen spawning in the northwest side. The pink and purple duo. Dragavan on the Abbasid and Ramen on the Rus. Meanwhile, the south and the east side, we got Deniska and Yellow playing as yellow and green color combination on China and English.
I gotta say, I appreciate that Yellow is now continuing to play with a yellow color just to avoid the confusion here. But I think one of the key things to look out for on this map is that the 2 players, the 2 teammates, are spawning on, you know, one side of the map such that the middle area between them on this little patch of land, I guess, is separated by a tree line. What this means is that it's reasonably easy for the players to wall themselves because they're shielded essentially by the teammate on one flank, and then the water, the trees in the middle. Really, they just gotta wall the front of their base, and they are nice and secure.
Yeah, doesn't cost a lot of resources for yourself, but also means that, you know, if your opponent moves forward, walls off the bridge, your teammate can't really get to you very easily. It becomes a very easy 2v1 situation. So that while it's easy to wall yourself, it's also easy to get walled on out too.
Oh, it certainly is. I wonder how this is going to be played, though, because this is a map where you could just wall, sit back, and play slow. At the same time, if you do that and you don't realize that you're facing, let's say, a very aggressive opponent, then you could easily get punished and it's game over. And I feel like if you're Dragavan and Ramen, you can afford to take that risk to a certain extent because you are the team up by a score.
Yeah, exactly. This is one where, you know, knowing that you have an extra game, you can perhaps do some cheese if you so desire. You can really do some weird strategies and maybe, you know, surprise your opponent out of nowhere and give yourself a little bit of a free win that you wouldn't feel as comfortable doing if you're sitting in the position where you're down 1-2.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always like to highlight. One of the advantages of being on match point is that you can roll the dice a little bit more than your opponent can, especially in an elimination set. If this is the opening round, or if this is not a direct elimination round, you can gamble a little because you have a second life. But here, that's not the case. If E-Gear loses this game, it's all done for them. So they need to be a little bit more cautious on doing risky things. Whereas Dragavan and Ramen have that one-up, which allows them to potentially gamble a little more and play for the upsides.
But looking at the backside, it is a golden gate and an economic wing. So it doesn't look like anything too cheesy. Just some plain, simple, typical builds that we see here. No proxy stuff going on. I'm sure Dragavan's going to go with an extra TC, moving out onto the stone already. Maybe even 2 extra TCs, depending on what he's feeling.
Yeah, I don't know. 2 extra TCs, that would be a little ambitious, so to say. Again, you gotta be cautious. I think it's a balancing act. You gotta have good scouting here and understand what your opponent is up to. Because one of the things that I've seen from today's games and even in the previous days is that if you can get an eco advantage untouched, you don't get punished for being greedy, that is how you win team games. At the same time, if you go too greedy, you're just gonna get absolutely annihilated and it's game over. So I feel like this is one of those maps where you just gotta go super greedy, but you need to do so knowing what your opponent is up to. So thorough scouting is a big thing, and you know, Ramen with the Roots does have 2 scouts out there, allows him to get a lot of intel. Want to make sure that he knows what his opponent is up to. Same thing here for Dragavan. I love the use of that Stealth Forest just to hide the scout.
Yeah, him getting the vision of the Abbey is one thing. He really needs to know what English is doing. Are they going Abbey Fast Castle? Or, as we know with God Vision, is he going 2 TCs very quick? Because if he's going 2 TCs very quick, well, now that could impact Dragavan's decision making. Does he want to go up with 3? Now we can see that Yellow moving out for a nice forward aggressive Barbican in that mid map. Couple of shots firing off on the scout, nothing too crazy, and the second TC drop being forward on the stone. This typically means a 3rd TC. It doesn't always, but usually if you're dropping on that stone, it means a 3rd. If you drop it on the gold or the wood line, it kind of means you're playing just 2.
Interesting idea. I think one of the cool things to look out for is whether a team is going to trade. Because this is a map where you can very easily secure a corner-to-corner trade. And I can see the upside of that.
It just takes a while to set up, and trading to your teammate I think got nerfed a patch or two ago, so they made it like 10% less as well. So you really want to be starting trade to a neutral market, and you also will have some weird pathing issues with the bridges. So like you, instead of dropping it corner to corner, they don't just get to run directly, you know, on the backside. They'd have to run across the bridges, thus making it have a longer walking time but the same gold drop off.
And also the bridges are destructible, so that's one thing to consider.
That is absolutely the case indeed. Those bridges can always get destroyed, although I haven't seen it too often here. Usually at the point where you're starting to see bridges get destroyed, it's kind of over from there. And it is indeed that third town center like I was expecting. And this is one of those that I think he made this decision based off of the scouting. You see your opponent go 2 TCs, and as Abba, you always go, I can one up that. I can go 3. I want extra TCs because my villagers cost less, means you can produce more military and actually support these TCs and have a much quicker payoff timing.
And Deniska knows about this. He saw the stone mine, so he should know how much stone his opponent mined. Means that he knows about that third TC coming up. At the same time, Ramen, he is only on 1 TC, rushing up that high trade house though. Keep in mind that this map doesn't have a gazillion relics out there. In fact, it's just 5 in total. And some of them are pretty difficult to access. In fact, some of them might be borderline impossible. And at the end of the day, rushing that castle age has less benefit for a player looking for the relics than some other maps do.
Yep. Meanwhile, one side rushing castle, his opponent on his side of the river is about to be dropping his second TC and Song Dynasty. So villager counts on either side. With all the TCs being dropped, it still will end up favoring Deniska and Yellow.
Yeah, I feel like this might come down to whoever is able to essentially transition this massive eco buildup into an army buildup. It's an eco race right now, but whoever is able to make the pivot to the army a little quicker and start getting on the map, start punishing the enemy, I think that's going to be the team that's going to be in a good position, because that's usually what you see in these games. We've seen that in some old 1v1s. I think one of the problems when you just go full boom on both players is that basically the player that transitions to army a little quicker is going to win. So a lot is going to come down, I feel, to the transition to this army, and I absolutely love this from Yellow. It's not a big investment, but a handful of crossbows, or Juyunu, I should say, harassing that hunt. This is exactly how you start off. Just start poking around and then wall in the relics. Love this little, you know, cheekiness, I guess, from Yellow. Just being smart with what he has available military-wise.
And you can see over on the other side, Ramen does not want this wall to finish on up, but there is a Barbican protecting this. He could definitely take down the villager. Oh, that's his own jukes. I'm an idiot. But wall, so yeah, wall gets finished up fine. And so Ramen, what does he gain with his fast castle play now? He even got delayed a little bit himself off of the things. He's going knights, and now that allows Yellow to just go, okay, I can play defensive into spears and kind of section off the maps.
Yeah, I really was wondering about that fast castle play, especially because even if he can secure all that map control, even if the relics aren't walled in, again, you just don't have very many relics here. And I don't think that high trade house is also remarkably good. I think it's like a reasonable high trade house, but it's definitely not something that's going to offset the differential in eco. 184, it's actually better than I anticipated. Still, let's not forget that his opponent is a Chinese Song Dynasty player. And now Deniska is going up with the White Tower. I do believe it's inside his base. And now we're actually seeing those bridges being walled off. At least Deniska is doing it on his side. So players are indeed sectioning off the map, making sure that these fast-moving initial knights will not be able to roam around and harass.
Yeah, and this is really where Deniska can get this timing push against Abba. Just like Ramen could have tried to do some timing against China, who's a little bit harder to do this timing against with hand cannon slits and things like that. But Abba, it takes a lot of time for their castle age to come through. You can see Dragovans trying to build up those resources. He's actually moving forward with some units over here on the side. Causes a little idle time himself. I love this. It's not too much of an investment, but needs to watch out for those units, as now now, Deniska has a double production building, essentially, not quite, with the White Tower, and can get a lot of those Castle Age units pumping out fast.
You know, this could be a little dicey here for the Dragavan, because he is still just in Feudal Age. He's going to click up the castle right now, and as you said, one thing that you get with the White Tower is that double production, and that allows you to escalate that knight count very well. Knight rate coming in here. One villager is found, although you could argue that when everybody's booming like this, losing a knight for a villager is not a good trade.
I would 100% agree that losing a knight for a villager right now is not a good trade, especially knowing that Ramen's 1 TC and Yellow's 2 TC Song, every knight that Ramen loses is a huge win for Yellow.
This is good harassment, though, and these spearmen are coming in clutch here for the Dragavan, because these are the ones that prevent these knights from ever charging in. It's just one knight out there. Deniska is having a lot of food, but he doesn't have the goal to mass-produce these knights right now. So a lot of time is being bought here. Culture Ring now on the way for the Dragavan, and we talked about this. Who's the first player to escalate that eco into army? And right now, Dragavan leads by a massive margin of villagers, and he could easily just play this as a separate 1v1, essentially. In fact, I think that's the direction that we're heading. 2 separate 1v1s, and I think Dragavan is kind of winning his side. I don't know about Ramen versus Yellow, though. I think that's leaning towards Yellow right now.
Yeah, I think Yellow is definitely in the better positioning point in the long run on that side. However, you just mentioned it, Dragavan has a huge boom going on behind this. Yellow's already made a granary transition too, with all the extra eco he has comparative. He's up 18 villagers compared to his side, whereas Dragavan, he's up 16 compared to his. So overall, the eco number's pretty even, but militaries is starting to build for Dragavan. He's about to have the Culture Wing finish, going to get a lot of upgrades on through, and Deniska still only has 3 knights to speak for himself.
One thing I like for Vest, though, is that they are the ones being active on both sides of the map. So if nothing else, like, sure enough, Ramen is losing knights here. I don't think these are good trades, but it ensures that Yellow keeps most of his army inside his base. And right now, I feel like he's just playing the delay game. He's waiting for his teammate to get up to Castle Age, and he's waiting for his teammate to just 1v1 the opposing player, Deniskaya. And at the same time, I wonder if Dragavan is thinking Imperial. Don't ask me why, but it looks like he's trying to go Imperial here.
I think that's just the typical ABBA going castle, and you want to save to spin.
I confused. Never mind. I confused the lines. I thought it's Ramen piling up resources.
Yeah. ABBA, but even still, he's still building up the resources. He doesn't have a lot in the queue, so I'm not really sure here. But usually, this happens a lot with ABBA, where you want to get all those techs in. You're waiting for castle. You're waiting for castle age units, and then all of a sudden, you castle, and you're like, I can go imp almost.
He's not producing any units, basically. He's got 2 spears in queue. I think this might be a genuine imp.
He is going.
Remember, he would get trade wing.
Well, he's waiting for preservation of knowledge, so he will have enough for imp here, because isn't it 20% discounted?
Yeah, it's gotta be imp. I think they're setting up for trade wing, and I'm starting to see a similar pattern here for Dragavan and Ramen compared to the previous game. They basically rush imp, and because the opponents weren't investing very heavily into the army, it's not like they can just launch a counterattack and punish this imp. But if you don't launch an immediate counterattack, by the time you do, your opponent will have the techs. So right now, Dragavan is basically building a tech advantage because he knows that he cannot be punished for this quick Imperial.
And instead of Trade Wing, doesn't really see the value in Trade Wings. Once Military Wing opens up a lot of upgrades, drops 3 Hand Cannoneers right off the bat when it finishes, which might not seem like much, but Hand Cannoneers are a very, very scary unit, especially when you have the amount and the numbers that Dragavan's already started to build up.
Now this is getting weird because Deniska is also imping, but guess what? Deniska is on 6 knights and he's facing off against 15 archers and 22 spearmen. So as he's imping, he's actually facing a substantially bigger army.
Oh,
gets his nice round. Oh, that is beautiful. And I think Deniska didn't expect this many spearmen to be nearby. And now this is nasty. He's up to Imperial with no army and basically no resources to work with.
The walls are really what got him. He was running to try to do some raiding, and the walls in the middle, he ran and just had himself full cornered, spears surrounded, and he had nowhere to go. Lost all those knights for nothing right as he imped, like you said. He will have the Wingard Palace, so can get some cool specialized units from that if you click a button.
I think this is now looking grim for Deniska and Yellow. They're outnumbered 2-1 in army. And Ramen has been building up knights as well. He's got 13 knights, 22 archers. This is not a fight that Yellow can win alone. But at the same time, there are two options right now. If Yellow doesn't help Deniskaya, he's going to get overwhelmed. If he does, Ramen is going to commit with the knights and the archers and just steamroll his base. I don't think there's a good answer here for Deniska and Yellow. Their position is just looking very grim.
Yeah, he's trying. You can see Deniska's trying to get production down. He doesn't have a lot of production because remember, he goes castle and had the white tower that he was relying on for production, and that's just not enough. Meanwhile, Dragavan, he's dropping more and more forward production. He is about to start this non-stop, just purple supply line across the map on that side with how many resources he's going to be able to put into military. He might be thinking imp, or not imp, next imp age later on if they need to run and they run out of gold, but there's no need. It's just going to be all into this military, and in Deniska, do not allow that Imperial Age to come online.
Well, the timing is so good, and we talked about this. Transition from that eco boom to army count is what matters the most. And now you see Yellow had to pull all his army to fight this. On paper, it looks good. They might be able to hold this off. The moment this happens, expect Ramen to push his side. That clump of units, archers and knights, they will start moving towards Ramen immediately, and that's a lot of damage done. Farms have been taken out, villagers are being idled out. And remember, at the end of the day, Dragavan is up to Imperial, he's got a sizable army. Deniska is up to Imperial, and he's getting no benefit from it. He's got no army to upgrade.
Yeah, no production really for Deniska. He's not really just able to be on a lot of resources, having that super condensed English eco. More farms attempting to be dropped. I think Dragavan trying to do a little cheeky play here, hide out in the back side of this wood line, wait and see, you know, watch and wait and make sure that the other side forgets about these units or has another fight and then does some raiding again.
I don't like this army kind of being trapped in here. Because now with the Jugenu approaching, you can clean up the Spearman and let the Knights do the job. But look at the right side. This is what I was talking about. The moment you get confirmation that Yellow is going to help the teammate, you just commit on the other side. And it's not like there is much back at home here for Yellow. And this is, I think, what Dragavan and Ramen did exceptionally well. They force Yellow to move to the other side, and the moment he does that, they're going to commit on this side. And that choke point is also working so well for these Abbasid Spearmen. Way too many casualties here for Deniska. These are expensive knights for a player that took a beating on the eco.
Yeah, and it felt like this was a really good fight, and it's just dragged on way longer than expected. And overall, Dragavan has to be really, really happy looking back at this. They're also stopping the bridge over from the teammate, so they're going to deny any help. White Tower being rammed down. This is looking good for Team VES.
Deniska doesn't have production. That's the only building that he's producing units on. He's got now a stable to the right side, but he cannot spend the resources. It's not like he has many of those anyways, but now he's going to get housed and at the same time push on the right side happening as well. And I just want to highlight in that little fight down south, this small skirmishing force is still alive. Some of the Gulams mixed in were heavily focused by the Jugenu. Those spearmen lived a lot longer than they were supposed to. And now it's just things getting very, very dicey. Basically, it's just these Wingard riders that are trying to somehow salvage this game for the Niskaya, but army count is almost triple right now for the Dragavan and Ramen.
Yeah, and you can see both sides of the bases. There's pink all into Yellow's base. There's purple all into Deniska's base, and it is not looking good for Team E-Gear. They're having losses and losses continue to mount up. The military numbers are falling. Deniska is at 3 military count. Yellow has a little bit, you know, to hold his own, but over on the other side, there is absolutely nothing. Maybe a wolf will be their hope.
And Yellow has no gold. And that is getting very, very alarming right now for them. They're just getting overwhelmed on all sides. And really, at the end of the day, this came down to 2 separate 1v1s in a way. Ramen, all he did was wait until Yellow went to help his teammate. The moment he did that, he moved out. his job was basically nothing more than just to harass and distract and let Dragavan do his thing on the other side. And when Yellow moves out to help against Dragavan, Ramen commits. Love this synergy over here. Again, I feel like the transition to Army from Eco was just a lot quicker for Volda Esport. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to secure them this game and also this series as a whole.
Yeah, I feel like ABBA just allows you to do that so much better. Cheaper villager costs. They all of a sudden had 30 extra villagers too as well. And what a good series by Team VES to move along and send E-Gear packing home.
Wow. This was a tightly contested set. VES had to fight tooth and nail for these games. But at the end of the day, I feel like in every single map, they put down a good performance. Even on the Islands map, they did a really good job. It's just that the strategy that they went with was just a little janky, and I feel like there was a better approach taken by the Niska and Yellow. But at the end of the day, every single time that the games went long, they had a really good setup. And I think for the team that's about to face them tomorrow, that is the Bills team with Jigglypuff, BLB and Gotkovsky, this is one of the things that they're going to need to focus on. Do not let Volda Esport play late game, because late game seems to be their domain.
Well, if we know anything about Jiggly, it's that he likes knights and cataphracts and raiding, and that is the recipe for not letting a team get to late game. So maybe as a good old matchup for Team Devils, maybe they're happy to see the outcome that we saw here today.